Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel, the Mutant God in American Comics. Chapter 41. The Attribute Panel, which was like a holographic projection screen, immediately appeared in Richard's sight. Host: Richard. Race: Human Alpha Level Mutant. Current Template: Sephiroth Fusion Degree 45%. Exclusive Equipment: Authentic Sword, Phantom Sword. Skills: 8 Swords Flash LV3, Earth Shaking LV3, Sky Shaking LV3, Zanshin LV3, II/LV3, Prison Gate LV3, Black Magic Crystal LV3, Thunder LV3, Blizzard LV3, Flame LV3, Wind LV3, Dimension/LV3. Magic: 523 2000ths, recover 450 points per hour. X-Gene Superpowers: 19. Alpha: Plunder, Super Strength, Super Physique, Super Self-Healing, Teleportation. Beta: Energy Emission, Energy Absorption, Invisibility, Supervision, Telepathy, Giant Body, Gravity Binding, Thermal Vision, Air Bullet, Flying, Attack Transfer, Mind Movement. Delta: Beast Intuition, Bone Claws. Task: None. Storage Space: Enabled. When he upgraded the skill to level 3, the system canceled the original proficiency display and only displayed the level. Unless he specifically opened the skill description, the system would not actively display the specific proficiency of the skill. In addition, after the skill was upgraded to level 3, he could finally control the consumption of the skill at will. In other words, control the power of the skill at will. He can now freely adjust the power of the skill between level 1 and level 3 according to the actual situation, and the consumption of magic power will also change according to the actual power of the skill. Although the system did not give a corresponding explanation, he could roughly guess the reason. If he had only released skills like playing games before, then after upgrading his skills to level 3, he had mastered these skills to perfection. To put it simply, even if there is no help from the system, he can now use these abilities at will, instead of just choosing whether to release skills like playing games. If there is anything he is not satisfied with, it is that in the past 3 months, the system has not issued any new tasks, so he has not been able to get new character template skills. After taking a look at his current fusion degree, a thought flashed through his mind. From the point of view that the system has not issued new tasks for 3 months and he has not awakened new skills, the fusion degree of 50% should be a watershed. When the template fusion degree exceeds 50%, the system should issue new tasks. Of course, it is not ruled out that he will automatically awaken skills such as the One-Winged Angel form, Supernova, Heartless Angel, and Destiny Declaration. After imagining himself performing the One-Winged Angel form in his mind, Richard's face showed an expectant expression. After browsing the skills, his eyes fell on the X-Gene Superpowers. Just as he initially guessed, psychic abilities such as Mind Isolation, Mind Charm, and Life-Threatening Suggestion can be fused and strengthened into a more comprehensive telepathic ability. More than a month ago, after killing a female agent of the Mutant Affairs Department, he successfully plundered telepathic abilities. To be precise, he plundered beta-level telepathic abilities. The moment he plundered telepathic abilities, abilities such as Mind Isolation, Mind Charm, and Hypnotic Suggestion began to merge and strengthen the newly plundered telepathy. If we only look at the level, his current telepathy is not as good as Professor X and the White Queen. But he didn't pay much attention to this. Although his current telepathy is only beta level, as long as he continues to plunder other psychic abilities, it is only a matter of time before his telepathy is upgraded to alpha level. Telepathy is not a particularly rare ability. In addition to Professor X and the White Queen, there are many psychics in the world. This means that he doesn't need to worry about not being able to plunder other psychic abilities. Not only that, as long as he kills enough psychics, or kills Professor X and the White Queen, it is not impossible for his telepathy to be upgraded to the Omega level. Judging from the number of X-Gene superpowers, his superpowers have not increased much. But in terms of strength, he is more than a little stronger than 3 months ago. Now, even if he does not use the skills of the character template, there are not many mutants who can be his opponents with only the X-Gene superpowers. After browsing the X-Gene superpowers, he closed the attribute panel and performed telepathy. In just a moment, he disappeared from the depths of a messy forest and returned to his current residence. Because he had an S-level wanted order issued by the Department of Mutant Affairs and had a flowing silver hair that was difficult to disguise, he lived away from the crowd for the past 3 months. Unless he wanted to buy daily necessities, he basically would not enter the city. Not only that, even if he went to the city to purchase daily necessities, he would use beta-level telepathy to freeze everyone in the supermarket. More importantly, after purchasing daily necessities, he would go to the next city, not giving the Mutant Affairs Department a chance to follow up. After performing teleportation and returning to his current residence, he slowly prepared lunch. The place where he currently lived was a small wooden house in the forest. Although he didn't know who the owner of this wooden house was, he was sure of one thing, that is, the owner of this wooden house was not short of money. The appearance of the wooden house was very ordinary, similar to the wilderness construction videos he had seen before crossing. But the decoration inside the wooden house was very good. In other words, this was a holiday home located in the forest. Living room, bedroom, kitchen, bathroom, etc. were all available. In the past 3 months, he had lived in a similar wooden house. It has to be said that the middle class in the United States knows how to enjoy life. There are similar wooden houses in the forests near many cities. It is precisely because of the existence of these wooden houses that he has lived quite comfortably in the past 3 months. After being busy in the kitchen for a while, Richard came to the dining table with the freshly prepared lunch and sat down. Then, he opened the laptop on the dining table and picked a good drama for himself. Although he has been in this world for more than 3 months, he still retains many habits before crossing. For example, when a person eats, he likes to watch while eating. A drama that suits your taste will make the food in front of you taste better. Of course, this is purely psychological. No matter how good a drama is, it can't change the original taste of food. However, Richard doesn't intend to change this habit. He eats while watching drama. Before he knew it, he had finished his lunch today. After lunch, he didn't immediately tidy up the knife, fork and dishes in front of him, but put them aside and started browsing the latest news online. Especially the news about himself. Although it is impossible to search online what kind of mutant agent the Mutant Affairs Department will send to arrest him next, it can also let him, who lives in seclusion, know what has happened in the outside world recently. After entering his name as a keyword for search, he soon saw a lot of reports about himself. The passage of time has reduced his popularity on the internet. But the influence he brought has not only not decreased, but has become greater and greater. Soon, a top-ranked report attracted his attention. New leader of mutants, Richard Wesley's influence on the younger generation of mutants. After seeing this title, Richard frowned slightly, clicked on the title of the report, and began to browse the full content. It took him only a few minutes to read the report completely, and he smiled and shook his head. This is a report from a well-known TV station. The TV station invited several experts to discuss the impact of his existence and actions on the younger generation of mutants in a live broadcast during prime time last night. Not long after the show ended, the report appeared on the internet, summarizing the views of the experts in words. Then, he was labeled with the eye-catching new label, New Leader of Mutants. From the perspective of communication, the TV station used the term, New Leader of Mutants, as the title, mainly to attract the attention and curiosity of others, thereby increasing the click rate of the report. Although the label, New Leader of Mutants, is a bit exaggerated, it is not a groundless title party. The experts who participated in the show all expressed similar views. Today's mutants are mainly divided into 2 factions. One faction is represented by Professor X and the X-Men, who advocate peaceful coexistence with the US government and ordinary people. The other faction is represented by Magneto and the Brotherhood of Mutants, who advocate the use of force to fight for fair rights. Although there are some fence-sitters between the Doves and the Hawks, and mutants who have no ideas or opinions. But in general, most mutants support either the Doves or the Hawks. And now, a new faction has emerged in the mutant community. That is the liberal faction represented by him, who neither accepts the Mutant Restriction Act and the management of the Department of Mutant Affairs, nor attacks other U.S. government agencies like the Brotherhood of Mutants, and advocates, I will not offend others if others do not offend me. More importantly, most of the mutants who support him are young people among mutants. To put it simply, they are peers of the same age as him. Although he knew before that there was a liberal in the mutant community who imitated his style of doing things and advocated, "I will not offend others if others do not offend me," he never thought that he was the leader of the liberal faction. He never thought about becoming the new leader of mutants, nor did he intend to use his own power to help the mutant community fight for anything. Mutants are indeed being treated unfairly now, but from a certain perspective, this is also the fault of most mutants who dare not resist. If these mutants unite and use force like Magneto to protect their legitimate rights and interests, neither the Mutant Restriction Act nor the Department of Mutant Affairs will appear. Fairness must be achieved with fists. If you don't dare to resist yourself, don't expect everyone to have a high moral level. Although Richard is also a mutant, he is a time traveler. He does not have a strong sense of belonging to the mutant community or to this world. For him, traveling to this world is like playing a real game that cannot be reloaded and has no system administrator. Whether it is Wolverine and Sabretooth, or the mutant agents of the Department of Mutant Affairs, or other people who died in his hands, they all give him the same feeling as NPCs in the game. It is precisely because of this that he did not feel any discomfort about killing people even though he started killing people on the first day of his journey. Although he knew that this world was not a game, and the people he killed were not NPCs composed of data, but living humans. But in a short period of time, it was difficult for him to change his mindset from playing games. In his opinion, he would have to stay in this world for at least several years before he would gradually change his mindset. After reading the report released by the TV station, he put his laptop into the system space, picked up the knife and fork and dishes and went to the kitchen to clean them. Then, he returned to the table, took out $1,000 from the system space, put the money on the table, and pressed it with a cup. This $1,000 was the accommodation fee he left for the owner of the cabin. It was already very rude to live in the cabin without the consent of the owner of the cabin. If he patted his butt and left without leaving anything after living there for a few days, it would be somewhat unreasonable. At least in his opinion, it was inappropriate to do so. When he was cooking just now, he found that there was not much food left in the system space, and he could only live for 1 or 2 days at most. Considering that he had lived here for 5 or 6 days, he planned to leave here today, go to downtown San Francisco to buy new living supplies, and then go to the next city. After leaving the accommodation fee for the past few days on the table, he returned to the kitchen and picked up the garbage bag containing kitchen waste. The next second, he decisively performed teleportation and disappeared out of thin air. Downtown San Francisco. It must be said that teleportation is much more useful than Flash. In just a moment, he came to the center of San Francisco from the wooden house dozens of kilometers away. Although he had never been to San Francisco before, it didn't matter to him who had teleportation. Unlike Flash, teleportation requires locking the location you want to transfer in advance in your mind. After locking the transfer location, whether you have been there before or have an impression of the transfer location in your mind will not affect the performance of teleportation. To put it simply, as long as it does not exceed the transmission range of telepathy, he can choose the transmission location at will. The rooftop of a building in the city center. Richard stood on the edge of the rooftop and observed the surrounding situation, and began to look for the nearest large supermarket. Without much effort, he saw a branch of a large chain supermarket. After discovering this supermarket, he did not immediately perform telepathy to go there, but first teleported to a nearby alley and threw the garbage bag in his hand into the trash can. Then, he performed telepathy to come to the inside of the supermarket. Telepathy. After transmitting to the supermarket, he immediately performed telepathy and fixed everyone in the supermarket. The supermarket, which was originally noisy and bustling with people, suddenly became much quieter. In addition to the music played in the supermarket, the TV playing in the home appliance area, and the various equipment in operation that were still making sounds, the entire supermarket fell into a strange silence. Whether it was customers who came to the supermarket to purchase, the staff at the cash register, or the security personnel in the monitoring room. At this time, they all kept their previous movements motionless like the exquisite wax figures. After using telepathy to freeze everyone in the supermarket, Richard began his own shopping slowly. This was not the first time he had done this. He was not worried that the Mutant Affairs Department would find him. Because after the purchase, he would leave San Francisco for the next city. Even if the Mutant Affairs Department knew that he had appeared in this supermarket, it would not be possible to lock his whereabouts. Time passed by little by little. After using teleportation to purchase the daily necessities he needed in different areas of the supermarket, he pushed the shopping cart to a cashier counter. Although $0 shopping is very popular in the United States now, he does not intend to do $0 shopping like those silent ones. Do not do good things for small things, and do not do evil things for small things. Taking the barcode scanner from the staff, he began to scan the code to check out. Every time he personally scanned the code to check out, he could not help but complain in his heart. Supermarkets in the United States are now fully capable of setting up self-service code scanning checkout areas, but whether it is large chain supermarkets in the United States or those small supermarkets, they are still using primitive, manual code scanning checkout. After scanning all the items in the shopping cart and taking them out of the warehouse, he took out the corresponding cash from the system space and put the cash and receipts together on the cash register in front of the cashier. Then, throw the purchased daily necessities into the system space. Mind transmission. After purchasing daily necessities, Richard disappeared instantly. The next second, the people who were fixed by telepathy returned to their original state. What is this? After looking at the extra cash and receipts on the cash register, the cashier wearing a supermarket uniform and a hat showed a puzzled expression. The roof of the building near the supermarket. Richard sat on the edge of the roof and took out a bag of potato chips and a bottle of frozen Fat House Happy Water from the system space. Which city should I go to next? While putting potato chips into his mouth, he was thinking about which city he would go to next. Although 3 months have passed, he is still in California, but he is not staying near Los Angeles. How about going to Las Vegas? Las Vegas is in Nevada, next to California, not far from San Francisco. If you use teleportation, you only need to use it once. When he was bored before, he deliberately tested the maximum transmission distance of teleportation. 200 kilometers. This is the current maximum distance of his teleportation. If he remembers correctly, San Francisco is only about 900 kilometers away from Las Vegas. This means that he only needs to perform teleportation 5 times at most to reach Las Vegas smoothly. Of course, the premise is that he does not get the wrong direction and get lost. Just when he was thinking about whether to go to Las Vegas and experience the local customs in Las Vegas, which is known as the World Entertainment Capital and Gambling City, he heard the sound of sirens from a distance. No matter which city in the United States, the police cars whizzing past with sirens are a beautiful landscape. Richard did not take these sirens to heart. But when he saw the police cars whizzing through the streets and surrounding a group of mutants protesting at the intersection, he suddenly became interested. Although he didn't know the mutants who were protesting, the signs and banners held by these mutants attracted his attention. Freedom is not a crime. Oppose the Mutant Restriction Act. Mutants should have the freedom to use their superpowers legally. Oppose the Department of Mutant Affairs' excessive use of power. Richard Wesley should not be wanted. After seeing the content on the signs and banners, Richard knew that these mutants were all so-called liberal members, that is, those mutants who regarded him as the leader of the faction. Not only that, among these young mutants, there were also his fanatical fans. The reason why he knew this was not because he used telepathy to read the memories of these people, but because he saw 7 or 8 mutants with long silver hair among the protesting young mutants. Long silver hair is a typical sign of his fanatical fans. If they have long hair, these fanatical fans will dye their hair silver. If they don't have long hair, they will wear a silver wig. As far as he knows, even if they are not his fanatical fans, or even mutants, there are many young men and women who dye their hair silver. As for why these young men and women who are not even mutants do this, the reason is simple, because they are handsome. To put it bluntly, he has set off a trend of silver hair in the United States today with his own efforts. Richard has no interest in the so-called faction leaders. But after seeing this group of young mutants protesting on a busy crossroads, and there were 7 or 8 of his fanatical fans among them, he still became quite interested. Because of the existence of the Mutant Restriction Act and the Department of Mutant Affairs, many mutants will not reveal their mutant identities in public. Even legal mutants who have registered with the Department of Mutant Affairs. Once you reveal that you are a mutant, even if you have registered with the Department of Mutant Affairs, you will still be discriminated against from all sides. Those who discriminate against mutants don't care whether you have registered or not. The San Francisco police who got off the police car started to drive away these young mutants without saying a word. Without any surprise, the San Francisco police's drive away quickly turned into arrests. When the San Francisco police began to use weapons, the protesting young mutants did not hesitate at all, and they all used their superpowers to fight with the San Francisco police. Bang 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 bang, boom 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 boom. The sound of gunfire, collision, hitting, and explosions continued, and the busy crossroads immediately became a mess. Although they had no guns, relying on their own superpowers, these protesting young mutants quickly repelled the San Francisco police. Of course, many mutants were injured by bullets and began to retreat with the help of their companions. If no other organizations and forces intervened, the young mutants who had repelled the San Francisco police could have retreated smoothly before the arrival of other police. But unfortunately, their luck was not very good. Before they retreated, the people from the Mutant Affairs Department arrived at the scene. Whether it is big cities such as New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, or those cities that are not so famous, there will be branches of the Mutant Affairs Department. The only difference is the number and strength of the branches. When the mutant agents of the Mutant Affairs Department arrived at the scene with fully armed special forces, the young mutants who tried to retreat were quickly stopped. If it was these young mutants who used their superpowers to bully the San Francisco police just now. Now, it is the turn of the mutant agents to bully them with their superpowers. Although there were only 4 mutant agents who came, their number was far less than that of the protesting mutants. But the mutant agents were much stronger than the protesting mutants. The difference in strength between them was about the same as that between an NBA team and a middle school basketball team. Without any surprise, in front of these 4 mutant agents, the protesting young mutants were caught one after another and put on the superpower suppression collar that looked like a dog collar. As their superpowers were suppressed, the protesting young mutants immediately lost the power to resist. On the rooftop of the building, Richard, who was sitting on the edge of the roof, looked at the young mutants who were escorted to the car and poured the last few chips in the bag into his mouth. Then, he raised his right hand and snapped his fingers lightly. Thunder, rumble, thunders suddenly sounded one after another in the clear sky. The next second, 4-arm-thick and more than a dozen finger-thick silver-white lightning bolts fell from the sky and struck the 4 mutant agents and Special Forces members head-on. After hearing the sudden thunder in the sky, the 4 mutant agents realized that something was wrong. But this does not mean that they can avoid the thunder and lightning cast by Richard. Compared with 3 months ago, Richard's mastery of thunder and lightning has reached the point of perfection. Whether it is the power of lightning, the speed of release, or the control of lightning, he is far better than 3 months ago. In just a moment, the silver-white lightning as thick as an arm hit the 4 mutant agents. As for the lightning as thick as a finger, it hit the fully armed Special Forces. They were all struck by lightning, and they all felt the intense pain of the strong current flowing through their bodies, and their bodies fell to the ground uncontrollably. This, after seeing the mutant agents and Special Forces being knocked to the ground by the sudden lightning, whether it was the young mutant wearing a superpower suppression collar, or the surrounding San Francisco police and onlookers, all showed unexpected expressions. Although they didn't know who launched the attack, they were sure of one thing, that is, the person who summoned lightning to attack mutant agents and Special Forces was definitely not an ordinary mutant. There are many mutants who can summon lightning or release electricity, but there are not many mutants who can attack so accurately and knock down mutant agents and Special Forces in an instant. Just as they were thinking about who secretly helped the protesting young mutants, a man with silver hair, imposing manner and handsome appearance appeared in their sight out of thin air. Richard. The person they saw was none other than Richard, who was sitting on the roof watching the show just now. After teleporting from the roof of the building next to him to the street, Richard said to the protesting young mutants, "If you don't want to wear a collar like a dog, you'd better practice your superpowers more. Your superpower skills are as unfamiliar as a child who has just learned to walk." As soon as the voice fell, the superpower suppression collars on the necks of these young mutants were torn by sharp wind blades that were imperceptible to the naked eye, and fell to the ground under the action of gravity. Strong wind, wind blade, Richard didn't have the idea of summoning the authentic knife to help them unlock the superpower suppression collars, so he chose to use strong winds to create dagger-sized wind blades. Although these dagger-sized wind blades did not have particularly amazing attack power, they were more than enough to tear the superpower suppression collars. After hearing Richard's words, a man who looked to be in his early 20s with short blonde hair said excitedly, "Finally, I see you in person. Do you live nearby, or did you come here to save us? Can we learn from you?" After the first one, the other young mutants around immediately surrounded him, just like fanatical fans seeing their idols, and surrounded Richard. At the same time, they asked him excitedly like the blonde man, and some even stretched out their restless, salty hands, to try to touch his body and stroke his flowing silver hair. Although they had no ill intentions, Richard would not let them touch him easily. Boys must learn to protect themselves outside. Bounce. Without any hesitation, he immediately performed bounce, creating a 360-degree air shock wave with no dead angles, pushing these young mutants back several meters. He did not create a powerful air shock wave, but just pushed them away without hurting them. "I don't have any ideas to teach you, and I'm not here to save you. I'm just unhappy with the Mutant Affairs Department." Richard glanced at the young mutants and said calmly. After that, he was ready to use his superpowers to plunder the 4 mutant agents. However, at this moment, he saw 2 familiar figures among the crowd of spectators around him. How could they be here? After seeing these 2 familiar figures, he frowned slightly. Black Widow, Natasha Romanoff. Hulk, Bruce Banner. This was the first time Richard saw Black Widow, Natasha and Hulk Banner in person. He had only read about them online before. To be precise, he had read reports about them in the Avengers online. Although this universe is not the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and there has never been a Battle of New York, in which Loki led the Chitauri to invade New York. But Captain America, Iron Man, Thor, Black Widow, Hulk, and Hawkeye still formed the Avengers under the influence of fate. Not only that, the connection between the Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D. is quite close, and it feels like a team under S.H.I.E.L.D. While Richard was looking at Natasha and Banner, they were also looking at him. At this time, Natasha and Banner were both wearing daily clothes, and they looked like the spectators next to them, and there was nothing particularly eye-catching. If there is any difference, it is that Natasha's figure and face are much better than the women around her. Even though she was wearing loose clothes and not the combat uniform that could fully show her graceful curves like a tights, she still stood out from the crowd. As for Banner, he blended in well with the crowd. In addition to his scholarly temperament that could not be concealed, he looked like a passerby. Of course, if he turned into the Hulk, that would be another matter. After taking a look at Natasha and Banner, and using telepathy to sense them briefly, Richard retracted his gaze. Although he could now easily read the memories of Natasha and Banner, he did not do so, but only used telepathy to confirm whether they were hostile. If they were hostile, he would take the next step. Otherwise, he would not read their memories like a perverted peeping Tom. After retracting his gaze, Richard did not waste any more time and decisively performed plunder. Gain new abilities. Super strength, super physique, force field creation, flame release, energy materialization. Gain the same type of abilities, ability fusion. Super strength and super physique are enhanced. Release flames to enhance the skill. Big flame, do you want to enhance it? Without any hesitation, Richard immediately chose yes. Skill Big Flame is enhanced. X-Gene Superpower Content Update. Beta level. Energy emission, energy absorption, invisibility, supervision, telepathy, giant body, gravity binding, thermal vision, air bullet, flying, attack transfer, mind moving, force field creation, energy materialization. If it was 3 months ago, the superpower of releasing flames would most likely enhance Big Flame by 1 level. After all, Big Flame was only level 1 at that time. Now, the X-Gene superpower of releasing flames can only enhance Big Flame to a certain extent, and there is no way to directly upgrade Big Flame by 1 level. It only takes 100 points of proficiency to upgrade a level 1 skill to level 2. And it takes 3000 points of proficiency to upgrade a level 3 skill to level 4. If you want to quickly upgrade your skills by relying on the X-Gene superpower of plundering, unless he can plunder alpha level superpowers. Obviously, the 4 mutant agents killed by him with the Thunderbolt were not alpha-level mutants. Among the mutants, alpha-level mutants account for only a few percent. Beta-level mutants or more, accounting for about 1/10. More than half of the mutants are only delta-level mutants. According to the evaluation system given by the US government, the number of level 2 mutants accounts for more than half of the entire mutant population. Turning off the information panel that only he could see, Richard was about to use telepathy to leave when he found that Banner's eyes looking at him were a little hostile. After discovering this, he did not hesitate and used telepathy again to simply read Banner's current thoughts. Want to help the Mutant Affairs Department capture me? Although Banner can transform into the Hulk, who has infinite strength and amazing defense, his magic resistance is not very high. Whether it is the influence of psychic ability or the illusion on the spiritual level, it is easy for him to transform into a rampaging Hulk. In the movie universe, Scarlet Witch Wanda has proved it with actual actions. After reading Banner's idea of helping the Department of Mutant Affairs to capture him in his mind, Richard began to read his memory more deeply. Soon, he knew why Banner suddenly had this idea. The reason is very simple, because the words of Black Widow Natasha aroused his competitive spirit as a man. While Richard was browsing the information panel, Banner asked Natasha if she wanted to help the Department of Mutant Affairs. Although they are responsible for different fields, the Department of Mutant Affairs and S.H.I.E.L.D. are both official agencies and can be regarded as allies on the same front. Banner has 7 doctoral degrees. But it is obvious that he is not very clear about the unspoken rules between official agencies. Before receiving the official request for assistance from the Department of Mutant Affairs, rashly capturing their wanted targets will not only not get their thanks, but also make them think that S.H.I.E.L.D. does not respect them. Natasha and Banner appeared in San Francisco not because they received a request for assistance from the Department of Mutant Affairs, but to capture the wanted targets of S.H.I.E.L.D. Although Richard killed the mutant agents and special forces of the Department of Mutant Affairs in front of them, Natasha did not think they had to stop Richard. So she rejected Banner's proposal. This would have been fine, but I don't know if it was because she was with Banner that she was a little too relaxed. She said something that could easily make Banner, or Hulk, feel a strong desire to win. I don't want to see you get hurt. For Banner, this sentence is normal. But for Hulk, it's different. Today's Banner can indeed control whether he transforms to a certain extent, but if Hulk insists on coming out, it is difficult for him to stop Hulk. Similarly, if Hulk doesn't want to come out, it is difficult for him to let Hulk come out. Natasha's unintentional words made Hulk, who thinks like a child, feel strongly dissatisfied. Will I get hurt? How could I get hurt? I'm Hulk. Although Richard was reading Banner's memory, he could also read Hulk's thoughts. Not only that, he could also clearly feel Hulk's strong reluctance to accept. When Richard looked at him again, Banner also noticed something was wrong. Before he could think about it, his skin turned a strange green, and the veins on his forehead and neck began to bulge. Natasha was the first to notice Banner's abnormality. Just as she was about to appease Banner, Banner roared like a beast, scaring the surrounding crowd and young mutants. Roar! Under the gaze of everyone, Banner's body began to expand, visibly. The coat and shirt on his upper body were directly torn by his increasingly large body, and turned into rags and fell to the ground. The jeans on his lower body could not withstand his rapidly thickening legs, and changed from long pants to shorts like tight pants. The Hulk. After seeing Banner transform, the crowd and young mutants around him found that this gentle uncle was actually the Hulk in the Avengers. If Natasha standing next to Banner before his transformation was the one who stood out from the crowd and attracted people's attention. Now, Natasha, with her beautiful face and hot body, has become the foil for Banner, or more accurately, the foil for the Hulk. After seeing Banner begin to transform into the Hulk, Richard summoned the authentic knife from the system space. Then, he slightly mobilized his spiritual power and said to the people around him, "Those who don't want to die, get out." Although his voice was not loud, with the blessing of spiritual power, his words were not only clearly heard by everyone around him, but also brought a strong sense of oppression that ordinary people could not resist. After hearing his words, whether it was the ordinary crowd or the young mutants like his fans, they all fled as fast as they could. Soon, only Richard and the other two were left on the busy street that had originally gathered many people. Natasha did not leave, but looked at Hulk with a surprised look. At this time, she did not realize that her unintentional words just now would make Hulk so competitive. Although he knew that Hulk just wanted to prove to Natasha that he was the strongest and did not really want to be his enemy, Richard still showed an expectant expression on his face. In the current Avengers, there are only two opponents that can interest him. One is Thor, the other is the Hulk in front of him. Iron Man Tony and Captain America Rogers are no less famous than them, but he is not very interested in Tony and Rogers. When Banner completely transformed into Hulk, Richard said to Natasha, who had not left yet, "If only half of San Francisco is left, will S.H.I.E.L.D. compensate?" What? After hearing Richard's words, even the experienced Natasha was stunned for a moment. She would never have thought that Richard would ask her such a question at a time when a war was about to break out. Although she didn't quite understand Richard's thoughts, she immediately started to explain. "We are not here to arrest you, we just happened to pass by." Natasha was telling the truth. But she didn't know why Hulk forced himself out, and she didn't realize that her words were adding fuel to the fire, making Hulk, who wanted to prove it to her, even more unconvinced. "I know you are not here to arrest me, but the big guy next to you is now full of fighting spirit, and he looks like he will never give up until he wins against me." Richard raised his left hand and pointed at Hulk with his authentic knife. After seeing him pointing at him with the authentic knife, Hulk raised his right leg and stepped hard on the ground, stepping out an obvious hole on the street. With the hole as the center, the crack spread rapidly around like a spider web. At the same time, Hulk opened his hands and roared like a wild beast again, like a gorilla. Richard didn't care about Hulk's actions and said to Natasha, "If you don't want to see me and this big guy destroy the whole San Francisco, I suggest you stay away from him. If you get hurt or die by accident, he will go completely crazy." After that, he held the more than 2-meter-long authentic sword and danced a knife flower casually. Then, he raised the authentic sword to the same height as his sight, with the blade facing up, his left hand in front and his right hand behind, posing a two-handed sword-holding posture that he rarely does. Although Sephiroth's dominant hand is his left hand, only when he holds the sword with both hands does it mean that he is really serious. If he only uses one hand, it means that he has not yet shown his full strength. Richard is the same. In the past battles, he has always held the sword with one hand. This is the first time he has held the sword with both hands. Hulk doesn't know the sword method. But after seeing Richard's posture, he, who was just like a beast, immediately became calm, and a serious expression appeared on his face, with huge green eyes staring at Richard. Seeing the Hulk who suddenly calmed down, and Richard who took a fighting posture, Natasha knew that she could no longer stop the fight between the two of them. She didn't say anything else, and just like the spectators and young mutants who had just left, she quickly left the intersection and came to the street more than 100 meters away. As she left, she took out her mobile phone from her arms and started to contact people from the San Francisco branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. She didn't want the agents of the San Francisco branch of S.H.I.E.L.D. to come and stop Richard and Hulk, but to let them come to maintain order and deal with the subsequent aftermath. When Natasha left, Richard and Hulk attacked at the same time in perfect tacit understanding. I saw their legs suddenly exert force at the same time and shot towards each other. In just a blink of an eye, they came to a distance suitable for close combat. Hulk raised his fist, which was bigger than an ordinary person's head, and attacked Richard's chest fiercely. Richard swung the authentic knife in his hand and chopped at Hulk's fist. Boom! Hulk's thunderous right fist and Richard's authentic knife collided fiercely, and a huge noise broke out. At the same time, a shock wave visible to the naked eye started from the collision surface. The shock wave swept around at an astonishing speed, shattering all the glass of the surrounding shops and cars. It's worthy of being the Hulk. The physical strength is high. Richard first sighed in his heart, then lightly tapped the ground with the tip of his right foot, and the whole person retreated more than 10 meters as if he was not affected by gravity. Although he chose to retreat, Hulk did not chase him, but looked at his right fist with some surprise. There was a not very deep but obvious knife wound on the middle finger bone of his right fist. Richard did not use skills such as 8 blades flash and earth shaking, but only used magic to slightly enhance the sharpness and firmness of the authentic sword. But even so, the authentic sword still cut Hulk's skin. However, it did not penetrate into Hulk's right fist, but was blocked by the phalanx of Hulk's right middle finger. Hulk knew that his body could not block any attack. But he did not expect that he would be injured by a long sword that seemed to be broken with just a little force. Although the wound was not very serious, it was enough to surprise him. While Hulk was looking at his right fist, Richard was also evaluating Hulk's strength. Judging from the fight just now, Hulk's strength is still much stronger than his. But fortunately, Hulk's strength is not as exaggerated as in the comics. Otherwise, even if he used some force-relieving techniques just now, he would not be able to fight against Hulk on the surface. Compared with ordinary people, alpha-level super strength is indeed amazing. But compared to the typical power hero Hulk in the Marvel Universe, the alpha-level superpower is not very strong. When Hulk's eyes were withdrawn from his right fist, Richard did not hesitate and attacked again. He came to Hulk in an instant as if flying, and swung the authentic knife again. However, this time he did not choose to fight Hulk head-on, but let the authentic knife slash towards Hulk's neck. In terms of strength, he is not as good as Hulk. But in terms of comprehensive combat power, Hulk is not his opponent. Although he does not have such superb fighting skills as Richard, Hulk's reaction is not slow. Before the authentic knife hits him, Hulk raised his right hand to slap the attacking authentic knife. At the same time, his left fist struck Richard's head with lightning. Richard certainly would not use his head to test how strong Hulk's punch is. Telepathy. He was originally standing in front of Hulk and instantly came behind Hulk. Swish. Before Hulk could react, the authentic knife swept across his back, leaving a scar across his entire back. Green blood, unusual for ordinary people, gushed out from the wound and flowed down Hulk's back. Although he didn't find Richard's trace just now, Hulk knew Richard appeared behind him after feeling the pain in his back. He ignored the pain in his back and kicked his legs hard, rushing towards Richard like a heavy truck running at full speed. If they were agents of the Mutant Affairs Department, they would definitely not adopt such tactics even if they knew Richard was behind them. Compared with hitting Richard with their backs, they would be more inclined to immediately distance themselves or turn around and counterattack. But Hulk is not an agent of the Mutant Affairs Department. For Hulk, it doesn't matter what kind of attack method he uses in battle, what matters is whether he wants to do it. As long as he wants, let alone hitting someone with his back, even if he grabs the opponent's feet and swings him around on the ground like a rope, it's no problem. From a certain perspective, Hulk's fighting style is somewhat similar to that of Saber-Tooth Tiger, both of which follow the body's instincts. Facing Hulk's counterattack, Richard did not use flash to leave, but raised his right hand. Bounce. Bang. A huge crash like an explosion suddenly sounded. Under the gaze of everyone, Hulk, who tried to hit Richard with his back, was bounced out like a golf ball, drawing a standard parabola in the air. Under the gaze of Natasha and the surrounding crowd, Hulk flew high into the sky and flew quickly towards the other end of the street. Boom. Although Richard did not attack with all his strength, Hulk still flew dozens of meters before falling heavily to the street, creating an impact crater visible to the naked eye on the ground. The impact crater was not particularly deep, and the force of the impact was nothing to the thick-skinned Hulk. But compared to the damage to his body, the damage to Hulk's mind was much greater. To put it simply, from birth to now, he has never suffered this kind of injustice. You know, he usually knocks other people away. But now, he was actually knocked away. More importantly, he was shot away in front of Natasha. Compared with Banner, Hulk never hides his love for Natasha. Otherwise, Natasha would not be the only person in the Avengers who could make him obediently return control of his body to Banner. Although the current Hulk doesn't understand what it means to have it between a man and a woman, one thing he is sure of is that he doesn't want to be looked down upon by Natasha. If Hulk had only been aroused by Natasha's unintentional words before, he had a strong desire to compete. So now, he is really angry. In other words, angry. For Hulk, anger is like the adrenaline of ordinary people, which can greatly improve his unreasonable strength and physique. Hulk, who was not much injured, immediately got up, turned his head to look at Richard, and roared like an ancient ferocious beast. Then, it ran towards Richard like a crazy rhinoceros. Dong 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 dong. Hulk's footsteps were as dull as the sound of war drums. Although dull, it also revealed an amazing sense of power. Every step Hulk takes can leave pothole-like footprints on the smooth and hard streets. In just a blink of an eye, Hulk rushed to Richard, raised his right fist and struck hard at his head. Facing Hulk's attack, Richard did not use teleportation to dodge, but instead swung the authentic sword in his hand. Move the ground. 4 consecutive slashes as fast as lightning appeared instantly, and the sharp blade of the authentic sword kept scratching Hulk's body. Chi bang. Unlike Richard's previous moves, Dongchi's last knife slashed across Hulk's body and sent Hulk flying away. Sukachi's last sword has always had the effect of killing the enemy. It's just that Richard rarely used it before, or in other words, he didn't have much chance to use the flying effect of Dongchi's last sword. Not to mention ordinary mutant agents and special forces members. The 3 swords in front of Dongchi are enough to kill them. Benjamin, the operations director of the Los Angeles branch, had the opportunity to experience the knockback effect of the final strike. But it's a pity that Richard's movement at that time was only level 2, and he was not yet at the stage where he could adjust the power at will. And now, he finally had the opportunity to use the final slashing effect of Dongchi. Under the gaze of everyone, Hulk was knocked away again, flew dozens of meters upside down, and fell heavily to the street. Neither Natasha, who knows the Hulk better, nor the melon eaters like Richard, who have only seen Hulk reports online, never imagined that the Hulk, who is much larger than Richard, would actually be able to do it in just a few seconds. Was knocked out twice in a row. Don't say they didn't expect it, even Hulk himself didn't expect things to develop like this. In his opinion, as long as he used a little strength, he could crush Richard, who looked like a skinny monkey, to death. But the result is that until now, he can't even touch Richard. Not only that, Richard also left 5 or 6 scars on his body. Although he doesn't know Richard very well, Hulk knows that he dislikes Richard very much, especially. Just like before, Hulk quickly stood up and ran towards Richard again. Then, with a bang, he was slashed out by Richard again. After realizing that he could not easily touch Richard, Hulk immediately changed his tactics. I saw him coming to the front of a car and lifting the car easily. Then, he used the car in his hand as a weapon and hit Richard hard. After seeing Hulk change his tactics and start throwing cars to attack him, Richard still did not use teleportation, but relied on his own flexibility to dodge the cars thrown by Hulk calmly. He would choose to avoid cars that he could avoid by just taking a step or half a step to the side, letting these cars fly past him within a few centimeters of him. If it's a car that requires several steps to avoid, he will cut it in half with his Masamune sword and let the bisected car fly past him. Bang 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 bang. One after another, cars were thrown out by Hulk as if they were free of charge. Although he tried his best to aim at Richard, the car he threw was never able to touch Richard. Not only that, after seeing Richard dodge his attack calmly, he was already angry and even more angry. It didn't take long for the Hulk to throw away all the nearby cars. These cars that had suffered unreasonable disasters were scattered all over the street behind Richard like garbage. Although Hulk's long-range attack failed to harm Richard, his move caused a lot of trouble to the people around him. When Hulk threw the first car, the people behind Richard realized that Hulk didn't care about their existence at all. They thought they were far enough away that they could stay at the scene and eat melon unharmed. However, it turns out that staying at the scene of a superhuman battle to eat melon at close range is a very risky thing. Even if they are not Hulk's target, flying glass fragments and car wreckage are also fatal dangers to them. When several unlucky people were hit by glass fragments and car wreckage, these people who were taking pictures of Richard and Hulk with their mobile phones realized that they were just people who were watching, not frontline reporters who had to risk their lives to grab headlines. No one needed to remind them. After seeing the injured unfortunates, these melon eaters ran as fast as they were fleeing. Neither Richard nor Hulk paid attention to these melon eaters. After Hulk threw away all the cars around him, Richard raised his authentic knife and said to Hulk, "Your ranged attack is over, now it's my turn." After speaking, he raised his right hand, palm facing up, and mobilized the magic power in his body. Black magic crystal. As the magic power was consumed, a black energy ball with a diameter of 20 to 30 centimeters and a pitch-black body, like a black hole, appeared on the palm of Richard's right hand. For those who have not played the Final Fantasy VII game, it is difficult to tell what kind of skill the black materia is from just looking at the name. The so-called black magic crystal is actually a meteorite formed by summoning magic power to fall from the sky and attack the enemy. In the game, the power of black magic crystal is fixed. But the power of the black magic crystal in Richard's hands is purely determined by the magic power consumed. To put it simply, the more magic power is consumed, the larger the meteorite summoned and the more powerful it will naturally be. In addition, he can also decide the height at which the meteorite falls. If it is in the game, the meteorite will only fall from a place 10 or 20 meters above the target's head. But here, Richard can freely choose whether the meteorite falls tens of centimeters away from the target or falls from an altitude of thousands of meters. The higher the height, the stronger the impact. But again, the higher the height, the lower the probability of hitting the target. Unless the target has never noticed the meteorite falling from the sky and stays in place stupidly. Hulk didn't know what skills Richard was using now. However, after seeing the dark energy ball floating above the palm of Richard's right hand, he immediately felt a strong sense of crisis. Hulk is indeed not an intellectual hero, but he is not stupid. To be precise, not only is he not stupid, he is also very witty sometimes. Just like what the saying goes, big guys also have great wisdom. Just when Hulk was about to leave his current position, he suddenly found that he was enveloped by a beam of green light falling from the sky. This beam of green light falling from the sky is nothing but a sign that the meteorite has locked onto the Hulk. Not knowing what happened, Hulk instinctively looked up at the sky. Then, he saw a meteorite several times larger than himself heading towards him at great speed. If Hulk ignores the green light that envelopes him, he still has a chance to leave before the meteorite falls. But unfortunately, he missed this opportunity. Boom! The huge meteorite carried amazing power and hit Hulk heavily. The huge sound caused by the impact immediately spread to dozens of surrounding streets, and the terrifying shock wave swept away in all directions with Hulk as the center. All the window glass on both sides of the street exploded with a bang, and the surrounding buildings and the ground shook violently, as if an earthquake was coming. Seeing this scene, the people who had just evacuated because Hulk threw the car were all thankful that they had evacuated to a farther distance. How many superpowers has he mastered? Is this really an ability produced by genetic mutation? How strong is he? Whether it was Natasha, the San Francisco police who arrived, or the crowd, they all had expressions of disbelief on their faces when they saw Richard summoning a meteorite out of thin air to hit the Hulk. Although mutants' superpowers are inherently strange, they still can't believe what they see in front of them. The air waves generated by the impact gradually disappeared, and the flying dust also began to dissipate. When everything returned to calm, Hulk soon appeared in Natasha's sight. Hulk stood up from the impact crater and looked at Richard with anger on his face. Just when he was about to do something, the green light pillar enveloped him again. Black magic crystal. After seeing the angry expression on Hulk's face, Richard used the black magic crystal again and summoned a huge meteorite. Not only that, he also made the meteorite appear less than half a meter above Hulk's head. Boom! Before Hulk could do anything, he was hit by a meteorite again. However, unlike before, Hulk was not knocked down, but raised his hands to resist the meteorite. Because the distance was too close, the impact of this meteorite was far less powerful than the one just now. Although Richard can also consume more magic power to make the meteorite gain terrifying acceleration at a distance of just half a meter. But he didn't intend to do that. Because instead of consuming magic power to speed up this meteorite, it is better to summon another one. Relying on the amazing power of cheating, Hulk resisted the meteorite and gave Richard a look of disdain. After seeing Hulk's disdainful look, Richard smiled and said, "What should you do with the third one?" The third one. Richard's voice not only reached the ears of Hulk, but also reached the ears of Natasha and the melon-eating crowd. If they were speaking normally, it would be absolutely impossible for Natasha and the others, hundreds of meters away, to hear Richard's voice. Unless they all have super hearing. They could hear it now purely because Richard wanted them to hear it and deliberately used magic power to spread his voice. Hulk was carrying the meteorite and couldn't see the situation above his head. But Natasha and the others could clearly see a huge meteorite that was more than 10 or 20 meters in diameter heading towards Hulk as it was traveling through the atmosphere at extremely fast speeds, surrounded by high-temperature flames. As Natasha and the others watched, the meteorite hit the meteorite carried by Hulk hard. Boom! The terrifying shock wave generated by the impact swept away in all directions like a hurricane. The ground was shaken again, and the flying dust raised by the shock wave enveloped the entire block. Even Natasha and others who were hundreds of meters away were also thrown away one by the shock wave. If given a chance to come back, they would definitely retreat a kilometer or two away. But unfortunately, there is no regret medicine in the world. Like Natasha and the others, Hulk now regrets it. At this time, he spread his hands and lay on his back in the center of the impact crater, which was more than 1 meter deep. He felt as aggrieved as a child weighing 1 ton. Strictly speaking, it's not like he really is a 1-ton kid. Although the one lying in the impact crater did not get up, Hulk's current injuries were not serious. Compared with the physical harm, the psychological harm he suffered was much more serious. In addition, he now finally understood why Natasha said she didn't want to see him get hurt. Natasha did not look down on him, but genuinely cared about him. After seeing Hulk lying in the impact crater unwilling to get up, Richard used teleportation to reach the edge of the impact crater. "Get up, I won't hit you with meteorites again, nor will I chop you with this knife," Richard said to Hulk. After hearing his words, Hulk sat up like an angry child. Then, he said in a muffled voice, "Hulk doesn't like meteorites, and Hulk doesn't like your knife either." After saying that, Hulk raised his right hand and pointed at the authentic knife in Richard's hand. "It's really a child." Richard smiled and shook his head, and put the authentic knife back into the system space. Then, he turned his right wrist. Phantom sword. Under Hulk's gaze, he summoned a phantom sword that was more than 1 meter long and emitted a blue light. It looked more like a work of art than a weapon. "Next, I will use the phantom sword to spar with you. By the way, do you know the difference between sparring and fighting?" Richard asked. Hulk didn't speak, but nodded to show that he knew. "Since you know, then get up and continue sparring." Richard continued. "Hulk wants to spar, Hulk is very strong, Hulk will not be knocked down." After saying that, Hulk stood up and patted the dust off his body. Although Natasha and the others couldn't hear what Richard and Hulk said, they knew that the fight between Richard and Hulk was not over when they saw Hulk stand up and come out of the impact crater. Not only that, they also found that Hulk was no longer angry, and followed Richard out of the impact crater like an obedient child. What happened to Hulk? After seeing the changes in Hulk, Natasha frowned in confusion. Although Hulk was not completely unable to communicate, it was very difficult to communicate with Hulk. Even she could only communicate with Hulk reluctantly now. Under the gaze of Natasha and the crowd, Richard and Hulk stood more than 20 meters apart. Then, they attacked each other at the same time. Hulk used his best melee attack, and his huge fists kept attacking Richard. And Richard also used the phantom sword to display his perfect swordsmanship, treating Hulk as a rare sparring partner. Stab, point, collapse, stir, press, chop, intercept, lift, cut, pick, wipe, cut, pierce. Although he did not use any fancy sword moves, but only performed basic sword attacks, these basic attacks were performed by Richard holding the phantom sword, and they still had a kind of graceful and elegant style. As for Hulk, his fighting style was the same as that of the saber-toothed tiger, relying on instinct to fight. Time passed by little by little. Unknowingly, Richard and Hulk fought back and forth for several minutes. Richard's previous battles ended very quickly, and it felt like playing a game of mowing the grass with a museau. Although his fight with Hulk now was not a battle, but a competition, it still made him experience a refreshing feeling that he had never experienced before. Hulk had amazing strength and good defense. Using him as a sparring partner, there was no need to worry about accidentally killing him. Hulk felt the same way now. In the past, he sneered at the so-called skills, but now he opened his eyes wide to learn. Now he has realized that only using brute force instinctively is not a qualified warrior. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Hulk will gradually realize this after arriving on Sakaar. Because of Richard, Hulk realized his lack of skills in advance and had the idea that he also needed to practice skills. Just when Richard and Hulk were playing happily, several missiles flew in the sky in the distance, flying towards them at high speed. Boom, 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 boom. These missiles hit their location accurately, and a huge explosion sounded immediately, and the orange-red explosion flames swept around. Along with the explosion, the sound of the Mutant Affairs Department fighter jets whizzing past was heard in the air. Soon, the flames produced by the explosion disappeared. When everything returned to calm, several huge explosion pits appeared where Richard and Hulk had originally stood. Where are the people? After discovering that Richard and Hulk had disappeared, Natasha and the crowd immediately looked for their traces. The next second, they heard thunder in the sky. Boom. Looking in the direction of the sound, Natasha and the crowd saw a huge lightning bolt falling from the sky. This silver-white thick lightning bolt did not strike the ground, but struck the black fighter plane whizzing through the sky. Boom. The speed of the black fighter plane was indeed very fast, but the speed of lightning was even faster. Under the gaze of Hulk and others, the black fighter plane of the Mutant Affairs Department exploded in the air like fireworks. The person who summoned lightning to attack the black fighter plane was none other than Richard. Before the missile hit him, he grabbed Hulk's shoulder, performed teleportation, and took Hulk, who had not yet reacted, away from the original position. Afterwards, he performed a big thunderbolt and summoned a thick lightning bolt that could destroy the black fighter plane with one strike. Before fighting Hulk, Richard knew that the San Francisco branch of the Mutant Affairs Department would definitely continue to send people over. Even if the mutant agents in the San Francisco branch's operations department were not sure of taking him down, the San Francisco branch would not pretend to know nothing. After using the thunderbolt to destroy the black fighter, Richard once again used teleportation to bring the bewildered Hulk back to the street. Looking at Hulk, who had not yet realized what had happened, he slowly said, "It seems that someone doesn't want us to continue playing, let's just exchange one more move and end it." As soon as the voice fell, Richard's left hand also had a phantom sword that looked more like a work of art than a weapon. After seeing Richard summon another phantom sword, Hulk nodded seriously. Although he didn't know what move Richard would perform in the end, he wanted to see it. Under Hulk's gaze, Richard held the phantom sword and danced a sword flower casually. Then, he raised the phantom swords in both hands and made a two-sword flow posture similar to a cross. The phantom sword in the left hand was in front, and the phantom sword in the right hand was behind. Although he didn't know what Richard would do next, Hulk suddenly had a bad premonition after seeing Richard's two-sword flow posture. Hulk's premonition was very accurate, but unfortunately, his premonition came a little bit late. The next second, when he had a bad premonition in his heart, Richard came in front of him and swung the phantom swords in both hands at the same time. Two-sword flow demon slash. Two-sword flow demon slash is not a skill of the character template, but a move he created himself. Although it is a self-created move, the use of two-sword flow demon slash still requires magic power. Otherwise, the phantom sword slashed out is just an ordinary slash, and will not get the extra blessing of magic power, and there will be no special effect. The two phantom swords swung by lightning hit Hulk's chest at the same time. Although both were slashed from top to bottom, the left-hand phantom sword slashed from Hulk's right shoulder to his left waist, while the right-hand phantom sword slashed from his left shoulder to his right waist. Hulk saw Richard appear in front of him like a ghost, but he had no time to stop Richard. Let alone stop him, he couldn't even raise his hands to block. Chi-chi. As the phantom sword passed, a cross-shaped wound immediately appeared on Hulk's chest. If it was an ordinary person or a mutant without a super physique, Richard's two-sword flow demon slash could kill the opponent without any suspense. But it was obvious that Hulk was not an easy target to kill. Like the ground shaking, the two-sword flow demon slash also had the effect of slashing the enemy. When Hulk felt the severe pain in his chest, he flew backwards uncontrollably, and green blood splashed out from the cross wound on his chest. Bang! The Hulk flew backwards and directly crashed through the wall of the building behind him, and was slashed into the building. Although Hulk was chopped off, Richard was sure that this injury would not kill Hulk. Or, he had no intention of killing Hulk. Although Hulk took the initiative to show hostility, he knew that Hulk did not want to capture him or kill him. Hulk did this just to prove to Natasha that he was better than him. To put it simply, Hulk was just too competitive and had no ill intentions. Hulk's mind was now similar to that of a child. As an adult, Richard certainly would not treat him like a child. Although he killed many people, he was not a perverted killer. He would not kill a child just because he was dissatisfied. In addition, he had a lot of fun fighting with Hulk this time. Because he knew that Hulk had no ill intentions, Richard did not use his full strength at the beginning. Otherwise, he would use his full strength to perform the 8 swords flash in the first move of the fight. After slashing Hulk, Richard immediately released the phantom swords in both hands and teleported to the Hulk who was slashed. At this time, Hulk was lying in the back kitchen of a restaurant, surrounded by broken wall tiles and fallen dishes. "Let's stop here today. If we continue to fight, people will really die," Richard said to Hulk, who had not yet stood up. After hearing his words, Hulk immediately nodded and sat up. Just when Hulk wanted to say something, Richard continued. "You can tell Natasha that you and I tied. You can't touch me, and I can't kill you. After all, your body is too strong, and your strength and physique are better than mine." After saying that, he stretched out his right hand towards Hulk. Hulk did not hesitate at all, and immediately stretched out his right hand and shook hands with Richard. Although Hulk is not as smart as Banner, and his mental performance is similar to that of a child, he can still see whether others are hostile to him, or in other words, he can still sense it. "Okay, see you next time. I hope your fighting skills will be better next time we meet. Come on, big guy, I'm optimistic about you." After saying that, Richard patted Hulk's head and used teleportation to leave the restaurant's kitchen. When he completely disappeared, Hulk stood up and took a look at the wound on his chest that was no longer bleeding. Because of his extraordinary strength and physique, many people don't know that Hulk also has a regenerative ability far beyond that of ordinary people. Even if most of the important organs in his body are destroyed, he can still regenerate and recover. In addition, he is immune to all diseases, poisons, chemical weapons, and biological weapons. In the comics, his regenerative and survivability are so strong that he can survive even if his entire head is cut off and soaked in a bottle full of formalin. Not only that, as long as his head is reassembled with the rest of his body in the specimen jar, he can completely recover in a short time, as if he had never been injured. Although the Hulk in this universe is not as strong as in the comics, his self-healing ability should not be underestimated. The scars left by Richard on his body will be completely recovered in a short time. After getting up, Hulk did not leave the restaurant kitchen immediately. After the cross wound on his chest was almost healed, he left the restaurant kitchen and walked towards Natasha. Las Vegas. After the episode with Hulk, Richard used teleportation all the way to the famous Las Vegas, ready to experience the customs of the gambling city, and by the way, see if he can plunder some superpowers that interest him here. Unlike before, he did not look for uninhabited cabins near Las Vegas, but came directly to the center of Las Vegas. To be precise, he came to the roof of a casino building. Las Vegas is surrounded by desolate deserts and Gobi, and there are no forests. This means that he can't borrow a holiday cabin in the forest of a middle-class family as before. However, this is not a particularly big problem for him. He didn't live in the city center before, not because he didn't have the ability to disguise himself, but because the forest with few people is more suitable for practicing his skills. If he wants to live in the city center, he can live in the city center. But it will be relatively more troublesome. For example, to disguise himself. After thinking about it, he still adopted the previous camouflage plan of sunglasses and peaked cap. His flowing silver hair is indeed very eye-catching, but he is not particularly worried about it. Speaking of this, we have to talk about his fanatical fans. After the Los Angeles branch incident, a group of fanatical fans who worship him appeared in Los Angeles. Although 3 months have passed, the number of his fanatical fans has not only not decreased, but has increased. The reason for this is that the Mutant Affairs Department has spared no effort to promote him. On the other hand, it is because the United States is a very psychedelic country. In the United States, as long as you are handsome, or have a unique personality or outstanding abilities, you can gain your own fans. Even serial killers and criminals have fans who worship them. Before crossing, Richard had seen a lot of news on the internet about American criminals who gained a group of fanatical female fans because of their handsomeness. At that time, he would never have thought that he would have a large group of fanatical fans. If his fanatical fans were limited to Los Angeles after the Los Angeles branch incident, the personal websites and forums opened for him by these fanatical fans were just small websites and local forums in Los Angeles. Now, the personal website and forum that originally looked rough has developed into a popular website and forum with a lot of popularity and registered members all over the United States. Richard also registered an account on the website and forum. However, he did not reveal his true identity, nor did he post on it. He just occasionally went to see what his group of fanatical fans were doing recently. Let's talk about the issue of long silver hair. A large part of his fanatical fans, especially those with long hair, dyed their hair silver. Even if they are not his fanatical fans, many people dyed their hair silver after seeing the videos about him. The fanatical fans in the San Francisco protest are a good example. Taking out sunglasses and a peaked cap from the system space and putting them on, Richard performed teleportation and left the roof of the casino building. As a world-famous, gambling city, Las Vegas will never lack tourists from all over the world at any time. These tourists may not come with the idea of getting rich overnight. However, they would not mind playing a few hands in the casino to see if they can become the lucky ones who return with a full load. Although he only wore sunglasses and a baseball cap, and did not cover his long and smooth silver hair, Richard found that, as expected, the pedestrians around him just took a simple look at his long silver hair and retracted their eyes. Even if there were a few pedestrians who kept looking at him, judging from the expressions of these people, they also regarded him as a middle school boy with a strong personality. Seeing that the pedestrians' behavior was similar to what he expected, Richard wandered around Las Vegas like other tourists. As a world-renowned tourist city, Las Vegas also has a branch of the Mutant Affairs Department. However, unlike the branches in other cities, the mutant agents of the Las Vegas branch have an additional job content. Prevent mutants from using superpowers to cheat in the casino. Strictly speaking, this job is not a normal job of the Mutant Affairs Department. But in Las Vegas, mutant agents don't mind doing this job. As for the reason, it's very simple, because these casinos pay too much. The salary of the Mutant Affairs Department is much higher than that of ordinary police officers, but it is only about $200,000 or $300,000 a year. Although this income is already a high income in the United States, it is not particularly high for mutant agents. Because their work requires facing a lot of life risks. If it is just to catch some ordinary illegal mutants, it would be fine. But the problem is that not every illegal mutant is easy to deal with. There are indeed not many top mutants with the strength of Magneto and Richard, but there are no fewer illegal mutants at the beta level. And most mutant agents are only at the beta level. This means that in a one-on-one situation and without additional assistance, the individual combat power of mutant agents is not very advantageous. After walking around the city for more than half an hour, Richard came to a famous casino. Although he was now an S-level wanted criminal of the Mutant Affairs Department, he did not encounter any obstacles and entered the casino easily like an ordinary tourist. After exchanging chips worth several $1,000s, he took the chips and walked around the casino. Then, he sat down at a Texas Hold'em table. Compared with blackjack and roulette, Texas Hold'em is relatively niche. Before crossing, Richard had played Texas Hold'em online and knew how to play Texas Hold'em. After sitting down, he started his first real-life Texas Hold'em in his life. Because he did not come with the purpose of making money, he did not use telepathy and perspective, but simply enjoyed the feeling of competing with other gamblers in gambling skills. It is said to be gambling skills, but in fact it is a competition of calculation ability and psychological warfare. Calculate who has the advantage between yourself and the opponent, use different betting strategies and facial expressions to confuse the opponent, observe the opponent's micro-expressions, etc. Although I didn't cheat by telepathy or clairvoyance, I don't know if it was because of my good luck or because I was relaxed enough. Richard, who played live Texas Hold'em for the first time, won more and lost less, and soon the chips in front of him increased from thousands of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars. As the chips increased, his betting strategy gradually changed from conservative to radical. Normally, he should soon experience the taste of defeat when his bets become more radical. Many gamblers get carried away at this stage and lose everything. Perhaps Richard was really blessed by the goddess of luck today. Even with the radical betting strategy, he still didn't lose. Not only that, the chips in front of him kept piling up. Am I really a genius at playing Texas Hold'em? Looking at the chips in front of him increasing from thousands of dollars at the beginning to nearly $100,000, this thought flashed through Richard's mind unconsciously. Perhaps seeing his superb gambling skills, many gamblers chose to temporarily avoid the edge and go to other gambling tables to find weaker opponents. This location looks good, it should bring me good luck. A middle-aged man's voice full of magnetic charm sounded. Looking in the direction of the voice, a man who looked like a playboy, exuding a bohemian temperament, wearing a black cowboy hat on his head and holding a metal cane in his hand appeared in Richard's sight. Although it was the first time they met, Richard recognized him immediately. The King of Cards, Remy LeBeau. If it was in the X-Men movie universe, the King of Cards Remy LeBeau should be an old man in his 60s or 70s now. But this is not the X-Men movie universe, so he is much younger and looks like he is in his early 40s. After taking a look at Remy LeBeau, Richard retracted his gaze. Although he didn't expect to meet him here, he didn't mind playing a few hands of Texas Hold'em with him. At the same time, he recalled Remy LeBeau's abilities in his mind. Infuse items with potential and kinetic energy, mind isolation, psychedelic ability, precognitive ability, and physical enhancement. According to the classification standard of mutants, the King of Cards, who has no mutant characteristics, no side effects of superpowers, and is good at fighting, is a very standard alpha-level mutant. Although he is an alpha-level mutant with 5 superpowers, the King of Cards' normal strength is not very strong. Especially in the X-Men movie universe. But in the comics, his strength is much stronger. In the comics, the King of Cards, when his potential is fully stimulated and his superpowers are normally exerted, will change from a flesh and blood body to an energy creature, new sun, formed by the accumulation of pure energy. As a new sun, he can control all individuals that store potential energy. Not only that, he can also control the target without touching the target, using only telekinesis to make the target completely stop or remain in motion. In addition, in the new sun form, he can also compress time and space, allowing himself to travel freely in different time and space. He is already very strong in the new sun form, but this is not his limit. In addition to the new sun form, he also has the death god form in the comics. In the form of death, his superpower of injecting and manipulating potential energy and kinetic energy will evolve into a powerful ability to change the properties of matter. For example, turning air into poison gas. If touched by him in the form of death, his consciousness will be invaded by death, and he will become a puppet that completely obeys him. If he uses his own energy to completely devour the opponent, he can also seal the opponent into a playing card. In the comics, the King of Cards will be a very difficult enemy. But in this universe, Richard is not very worried about how much trouble he will bring to himself. Not only that, if the King of Cards provokes him, he doesn't mind making the King of Cards' superpowers his own superpowers. After sitting down, the King of Cards showed a smile that could make women's hearts beat, but it was a little greasy for men, and looked at Richard casually. The first time the King of Cards looked at him, Richard knew that he didn't like the King of Cards' greasy smile and eyes. Just when he was about to speak, new mission information suddenly appeared in his sight. Mission: One-Winged Angel 2. Mission content: Rescue Scarlet Witch, Wanda and Quicksilver, Pietro, who are imprisoned by the Hellfire Club. Mission reward: Shadow Flame. Mission time limit: 1 week. Chapter 51. Rescue Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. After seeing the newly released tasks from the system, Richard frowned slightly. He knew that there would definitely be Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in this world, but he did not expect that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver would now be imprisoned by the Hellfire Club. Do you want to threaten Magneto? After reading the mission content, Richard's first reaction was that the Hellfire Club wanted to threaten Magneto through Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. But soon, he overturned this guess. Magneto doesn't even know that he has twins, and the Hellfire Club is even less likely to know. In addition, Magneto is not someone who is easily threatened. Even though Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver are his children. If Professor Gambit couldn't see the mission information that appeared in front of Richard like a holographic projection screen, but he could see Richard's expression. Am I not welcome to join the game? Gambit King asked Richard. After hearing Gambit's words, Richard closed the task panel and replied calmly, has anyone ever told you that your smile is quite greasy? What? Gambler originally thought that Richard just didn't want to join the game. Unexpectedly, Richard actually complained about his smile. Greasy. I've never heard anyone say this. I only know that there are many women who like my smile. After saying that, the card king raised his eyebrows at the female dealer who dealt the cards. The female dealer who deals the cards is not the dealer that often appears on scam websites, she is just a little prettier than ordinary passers-by. After seeing the card king raising an eyebrow at her, the female dealer ignored him and asked Richard and another gambler if they should continue the game. Obviously, the female dealer is not the kind of little girl who will be easily fooled by the greasy smile of the card king. Richard nodded and signaled the game to continue. Another gambler did the same and chose to continue the game. After discovering that neither Richard nor the female dealer gave him much face, Gambit King threw out his chips and joined the game. Like the previous card games, Richard did not use his superpowers. Although he didn't know whether Gambit had used superpowers, he had no intention of using superpowers to cheat in such an inconsequential card game. Time passes little by little. Less than 20 minutes passed. Another gambler lost all his chips, leaving only Richard and Gambit to gamble. When only he and Richard were left on the card table, the card king suddenly asked Richard, "Have you also received an invitation?" Invite. Could it just be an invitation from the Hellfire Club? After hearing the invitation mentioned by Gambit King, Richard's first reaction was the invitation from Hellfire Club. He would immediately suspect the Hellfire Club, partly because the Hellfire Club was mentioned in the mission just released by the system. On the other hand, he remembered that the Hellfire Club in the movie had a secret base in Las Vegas. If Gambit doesn't have the ability to isolate his mind, he will definitely use telepathy on Gambit. But it's a pity that Gambit has telepathy. Although there was no way to determine what the invitation the king of gambling was talking about, he did not show any surprise or curiosity and replied calmly, "I don't think I need to tell you." After hearing Richard's answer, Gambit King's tone became unhappy. "Boy, I shouldn't have offended you, right? Don't be too arrogant at a young age. You're still called a young man if you're not full of energy." Richard glanced at the card king and threw the trump card in front of him to the female dealer, indicating that he would not follow this one. Gambit King suppressed his displeasure and continued, "If you were really so smart, would you take off your hat and sunglasses?" On the surface, Gambit is using aggressive tactics. But Richard knew that Gambit was not provoking him, but recognized him. Although Gambit cannot telepathize and can only isolate his mind, this does not mean that Gambit cannot recognize him. "You're not qualified enough to ask me to take off my hat and sunglasses," Richard said to Gambit King. "I won't say whether I'm qualified or not. I just know that as long as I name a name, I can get you into big trouble." Gambit King quickly replied, "If you want to say something, you can just say it. By the way, I also know one thing, that is, after you finish speaking, the person in big trouble will definitely not be me, but you. If you don't believe it, can you try it?" Richard picked up a chip in front of him and threw it into the center of the card table. If his strength allows, Gambit really wants to teach Richard a lesson and let him know what it means to respect the old and love the young. But unfortunately, he does not have such strength. He is quite confident in his own strength, but he is not arrogant enough to deal with Richard. Before coming to the casino, he saw reports on the fight between Richard and Hulk on the internet and videos uploaded by melon-eating people. Although he was not at the scene, after seeing those videos, especially after seeing Richard summoning meteorites to hit Hulk, he knew that he would definitely not be Richard's opponent. In his opinion, Richard could easily destroy an entire city just by summoning meteorites. He didn't think he was weak, but he wasn't arrogant enough to think he could defeat Richard. Looking at Richard, who was unmoved, the king of cards picked up a round chip and let it roll between the fingers of his right hand. After a few seconds of silence, he said, "It seems that today is not a good day for a big bet. You can play slowly." After that, the king of cards picked up the chips in front of him, stood up and left the gambling table. Richard didn't care whether the king of cards would go to other gambling tables or leave the casino directly. After the king of cards left, he sat in a chair and waited for a few minutes. After finding that no one was willing to come and gamble with him, he sighed helplessly, picked up the chips and went to the exchange window to exchange the chips for cash. Then, he left the casino with more than 100,000 cash he won. Caesar's Palace Hotel. After leaving the casino, Richard went straight to the famous Caesar's Palace Hotel and checked in at the hotel. Although he is now an S-level wanted criminal of the Mutant Affairs Department and has no way to provide legal identification to the front desk staff, this is not a very troublesome thing. He just used telepathy a little bit, and the blonde receptionist, who was wearing a tight black dress and showed off her graceful curves, used her ID to help him check in. Not only that, when the good-looking receptionist handed him the room card, she also handed him a business card. "I get off work at 6 o'clock, and I can take leave tomorrow and the next 2 days," the receptionist said softly in a voice that only the two of them could hear. Although the receptionist was pretty good-looking, she could get about 7 points out of 10, but Richard didn't want to have a deep communication with her. This is the Marvel Universe. Even if you want to have a deep communication with the opposite gender about the origin of life, at least you have to have a deep communication with those famous female heroes and female villains. At the very least, you should be like Tony Stark, with female stars, supermodels, famous female reporters, magazine cover girls, etc., instead of with the receptionist who is not stunning and has no status halo. Richard came to the newly opened business suite with the room card and sat down on the sofa in the living room, thinking about rescuing Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. Although the system issued the task of rescuing them, it did not provide detailed information. He now only knew 2 pieces of information. One was that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were being held by the Hellfire Club. The other was that the invitation mentioned by the King of Cards might be an invitation from the Hellfire Club. Although the information he currently knows is not much, Richard already knows where he should start. He didn't think the system would issue a mission to rescue Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver for no reason, nor did he think it was a coincidence that he met Gambit in the casino. Not only that, his intuition also told him that the invitation mentioned by Gambit was, if nothing else, an invitation from the Hellfire Club. Gambit has the superpower of telepathy, and he cannot telepathically telepathize with Gambit. But Gambit is definitely not the only mutant who was invited. What's more, other mutants won't have the power of psychic isolation. This means that he only needs to use telepathy to find other mutants in Las Vegas to find out whether the invitation mentioned by Gambit is related to the Hellfire Club. If all goes well, he can also telepathically find members of the Hellfire Club. After thinking briefly, he immediately used telepathy without any hesitation. Without much effort, he sensed 200 to 300 mutants in downtown Las Vegas. He ignored the Epsilon level and Delta level mutants and focused on sensing the Beta level and Alpha level mutants. Although it is still not certain that the invitation mentioned by Gambit is related to the Hellfire Club. But you don't need to think about it to know that mutants who are too weak will most likely not receive the invitation. Compared with the Brotherhood of Mutants and the X-Men, the Hellfire Club is less famous and is not as world famous as the Brotherhood of Mutants and the X-Men. Although not as famous as the Brotherhood of Mutants and the X-Men, the Hellfire Club is not much weaker than the Brotherhood of Mutants and the X-Men. Apart from anything else, those who can become official members of the Hellfire Club, without exception, are all named beings in the Marvel Universe. I won't talk about the 4 characters who have appeared in the movie: Sebastian Shaw, Black King, Emma, White Queen, Azazel, Red Devil, and Janos Quest, Riptide. In the comics, Magneto, Dark Phoenix, Captain Britain, Brian, son of Mephisto, Blackheart, son of Satan, Hellstorm, son of Apocalypse, Carnage, Madam Hydra, and the clone of Phoenix, the Red Queen, among others, was a member of the Hellfire Club at some point. If the Brotherhood of Mutants is open to all comers, anyone can join as long as they agree with the concept of using force to fight for power. The Hellfire Club is an out-and-out mutant organization that only recruits elites. Therefore, the mutants who can be invited to the Hellfire Club will definitely not be ordinary Epsilon level and Delta level mutants. Unless they have very special superpowers. After excluding the Epsilon level and Delta level mutants, the number of mutants who needed further confirmation by Richard suddenly dropped to less than 50. Without wasting time, he immediately began to have more in-depth telepathy with the remaining mutants, and quietly read their memories. Of the remaining mutants, more than half are mutant agents of the Department of Mutant Affairs. After excluding the mutant agents, there were only 15 mutants left. Among these 15 mutants, only 8 received invitations. Just as Richard guessed, the person who invited them was indeed the Hellfire Club. However, they don't know why the Hellfire Club invited them. The invitation they received only had a time and address, but no specific content. The day after tomorrow at 8 p.m., Atomic Nightclub. In addition to figuring out the time and place, Richard also figured out who the current leader of the Hellfire Club was. Although this is not the X-Men movie universe, the current leader of the Hellfire Club is still the Dark King, Sebastian Shaw. In addition, White Queen, Emma, Red Devil, Azazel, and Riptide, Janos Quest are now also members of the Hellfire Club, exactly like in the movie. After discovering that the current leader of the Hellfire Club was Black King Shao, Richard immediately made a decision. He Wang Shao's X-gene superpower, energy absorption, is determined by him. Black King Shao is not an Omega-level mutant, but his energy absorption is stronger than many of the same type. General energy absorption can only absorb a single or several forms of energy. Black King Shao's energy absorption allows him to absorb all energy except spiritual energy, including but not limited to kinetic energy, thermal energy, electrical energy, nuclear energy, etc. More importantly, his energy absorption can also directly absorb the energy from enemy attacks. Whether you attack him with fists, fire bullets and cannonballs at him, or attack him with lightning and shock waves, the energy contained in the attack will be absorbed by him. In addition, the energy absorbed and stored in his body can not only be released again, but can also be used to strengthen his physical attributes. Although his energy absorption is stronger than many mutants of the same type, he still has weaknesses. Whether it is absorbing energy or storing energy in the body, there is an upper limit. To put it simply, it cannot absorb infinitely and store it permanently. Once it exceeds the upper limit, it will cause serious damage to him. If he can absorb and store energy infinitely, he can become a real Omega-level mutant. When there is no energy stored in his body, Black King Shao can only be regarded as an ordinary person with a relatively strong body. As long as a battle occurs, he can quickly make his physical attributes reach the level of superhuman. Unless his enemies do not attack him, he will not have the opportunity to absorb energy from the attack. Of course, he can also absorb and store energy in advance before the battle begins. For example, as in the movie, absorbing the energy of the nuclear reactor in advance to facilitate himself to deal with the next battle. With only the superpower of energy absorption, Black King Shao is difficult to defeat by conventional means. However, he is still not invincible, because he can't resist the telepathy of psychics. Without wearing a helmet that isolates telepathy and the White Queen is not by his side, he can't defend and resist any psychic attack. The reason why Black King Shao in the movie was defeated was because Magneto took off his mind-isolating helmet, which gave Professor X the opportunity to fix him with telepathy and finally completed his revenge. In addition, the fact that Black Shao in the movie was killed by Magneto was also related to his underestimation of the enemy. To put it in a more vivid way, the villain died because he talked too much. In addition to energy absorption, Black Shao also has a self-healing factor. Although he can't heal himself as fast as Sabretooth and Wolverine, his self-healing ability is still very unscientific compared to ordinary people. In addition, his self-healing factor can effectively slow down his aging. If he absorbs enough energy, he can also achieve rejuvenation and immortality to a certain extent. After recalling Black Shaw's energy absorption ability in his mind, Richard's idea of plundering his superpowers became stronger and stronger. Not only that, he is also very interested in the telepathy of the White Queen. As long as he plunders the telepathy of the White Queen, his telepathy can be upgraded to alpha level immediately. Although he may not be as good as Professor X after the upgrade, it can also make him one of the top psychics on Earth. In addition to being interested in the telepathy of the White Queen, he is also very interested in the White Queen herself. Just now, when searching for information about the Hellfire Club from the minds of the 8 mutants, he unexpectedly discovered that not only was Black Shao younger than in the movie, but the White Queen was also the same. Black Shao in the movie was 30 or 40 years older than Magneto. And the White Queen was about the same age as Magneto and Professor X. Although the 8 mutants did not know the exact ages of Black Shao and the White Queen, from what they knew, Black Shao would not be more than 40 years old, and the White Queen would not be more than 30 years old. After discovering that the White Queen was younger than he expected, Richard's mind immediately flashed through the various white outfits of the White Queen in the movie. White clothes, white skirts, white boots, white bikinis, white underwear. If the White Queen's age was the same as in the movie, she would be the same age as Magneto and Professor X. Richard would not have any interest in Emma, the White Queen. Just like he would not be interested in Mystique, who was his grandmother. But if the White Queen is only in her 20s or 30s, that's another story. After thinking for a while, Richard temporarily removed the White Queen from the kill list. Although killing the White Queen can upgrade his telepathy, there are not a few psychics in this world. Even if he doesn't kill the White Queen, he can still upgrade his telepathy to the alpha level. Miami. On the sun deck of a luxury yacht. The White Queen, who has blonde hair, blue eyes, fair skin, tall figure, and round and slender legs, is lying on the sofa wearing sunglasses, enjoying the sea breeze and sunbathing. Although the Hellfire Club dinner will start at 8 p.m. the day after tomorrow, neither the White Queen, nor the Black King Shao, nor the Red Devil and Riptide are going to Las Vegas now, but are staying in Miami. With the Red Devil here, they can go there at any time and don't need to stay in Las Vegas at all. Just as the White Queen was happily enjoying today's sunbathing, Riptide Janos Questi, who was wearing a white suit, came to her and said to her. The people outside Las Vegas sent a message saying that they saw Remy LeBeau and Richard Wesley in the casino. Richard Wesley. After hearing Riptide's words, the White Queen took off her sunglasses and said, "Isn't he still in San Francisco at noon today? It looks like he has already left. He has the ability to teleport. It's not surprising that he arrived in Las Vegas in a short time." Riptide continued. "Does Shao know?" Queen Bai sat up and asked Riptide. "He was the one who asked me to come to you. He meant for you and Azazel to go there immediately and give him an invitation to the dinner." After saying that, Riptide took out an invitation to the Hellfire Club from his jacket pocket and handed the invitation to the White Queen. "Why should I go? Just let Azazel go alone for this kind of thing," the White Queen asked in confusion without reaching out to accept the invitation. "Because he is also a psychic, it is safer for you and Azazel to go there together," Riptide said slowly. "Richard is a psychic." After hearing Riptide's answer, the White Queen frowned slightly. Although psychic powers are not particularly rare, they are not ubiquitous. When Richard became an S-class wanted criminal by the Department of Mutant Affairs, the Hellfire Club began to collect intelligence about him. The White Queen has also seen the collected information. But she didn't remember that it said that Richard had psychic powers. "Where did you collect the information that he is a psychic? Department of Mutant Affairs, Avengers, or X-Men?" The White Queen frowned and asked. "Don't ask me, I don't know either. Shao told me." Like the White Queen, Riptide only found out today that Richard is a psychic. To be precise, he only learned about this from He Wangshao when He Wangshao handed him the invitation letter. As for where He Wangshao knew it, he didn't know. He Wangshao didn't say anything, and he didn't ask. This is called tacit understanding. After thinking for a few seconds, the White Queen slowly said, "Leave the invitation, I'll go there with Azacer later." "Good." Riptide placed the invitation on the table in front of the White Queen. After seeing the White Queen put on sunglasses and continue sunbathing, Ryu's eyes unconsciously fell on the White Queen's attractive body. Then, he looked back and forth unabashedly. Although he usually doesn't lack women, it doesn't mean that he has no thoughts about the White Queen. Not only him, but Black King Shao and Red Devil Azazel also have a lot of interest in the White Queen. Being interested in beautiful women is engraved in men's DNA. Of course, exceptions are men who are physically incompetent and who love men. As long as they are normal men, they will be interested in beautiful women. The only difference lies in whether to take action and how to deal with the other party. Although Black King Shao, Red Devil, and Riptide are all very interested in the White Queen, they have no intention of forcing the White Queen. Partly because the White Queen is now their companion. On the other hand, it's because the White Queen is not an ordinary woman with no power. The White Queen's telepathy is tricky enough. In addition to telepathy, she also has a diamond form. To put it simply, unless the White Queen is willing, even if they want to force the White Queen, there is nothing they can do against the White Queen. Riptide didn't hide his gaze. The White Queen didn't pay attention to his inspection. In other words, she has long been used to this kind of thing. Not only that, she quite likes this kind of thing. Because it means she is a very beautiful and attractive woman. After looking back and forth on the White Queen's alluring body several times, she fiercely left the sun deck. Afterwards, he left the yacht and prepared to go find his lover in Miami to exchange feelings. Las Vegas. Little did Richard know that the White Queen and the Red Devil would send him invitations next. At this time, he was measuring the size of his suit in a handmade tailor shop that only accepted private customization. Although suits are not as convenient as casual wear and sportswear, suits are still essential clothing for mature men. A suit is the armor of the modern gentleman. On certain occasions, a crisp and decent suit can well demonstrate your temperament and charm. In addition, even if you fight in a suit, as long as you look handsome enough and move well enough, you will still have the unique charm of a suited thug. Richard came here to customize a suit for a simple reason. Because after watching the video of his battle with Hulk this afternoon, he discovered a problem that he had overlooked before. Clothing. His clothes are too casual. In addition to his strong strength and handsome appearance, Sephiroth's charming clothes are also a very important factor in his popularity. Silver shoulder armor, black windbreaker, looming strong chest muscles. If conditions permit, Richard doesn't mind wearing the same windbreaker as Sephiroth to the Atomic Nightclub. But unfortunately, he can't get the same clothes as Sephiroth now. In the movie, when the Thought Body, Cardoncho and Genova cells combined to revive Sephiroth, Sephiroth's clothes and authentic sword were transformed by energy. Richard had tried to use magic to transform Sephiroth's clothes before. But I don't know if it's because the template fusion degree is not high enough, or the control of magic and the use of skills are not proficient enough, he can't use energy to transform Sephiroth's clothes now. Since there is no way to completely replicate Sephiroth's outfit, he can only use a custom-made suit instead. Wearing a custom-made expensive suit, holding a 2-meter-long silver-white authentic knife, and performing a suit thug battle with actual actions is better than fighting in casual clothes and sportswear. Unlike playing Texas Hold'em in a casino, Richard did not disguise himself at this time. Because there was only an old tailor who was said to be the British royal family and a few assistants in the tailor shop, and he was the only customer in the whole tailor shop. After entering the tailor shop, he used telepathy on everyone in the tailor shop and changed his image in their eyes. Although he can't use telepathy to affect the vision of thousands of people at the same time, it is still no problem to affect more than a dozen or 20 people. This kind of handmade tailor shop that only accepts private orders, and the head tailor was once the royal tailor, will not have many customers in a year. Although there are not many customers, this kind of tailor shop is truly 3 years of no opening, 3 years of opening and eating. Before crossing over, Richard had never been to such a private tailor shop, but the original body had been there several times. After all, the original body was undoubtedly a rich second generation, and had attended various dinners and parties with his father since childhood. Time passed by little by little. It took almost half an hour just to measure the size. And this was just the beginning. The choice of fabric, the style of the collar, the material of the buttons, etc. all needed to be selected. After spending more than an hour in this handmade tailor shop, Richard completed all the processes required for custom-made suits. Gun lapel, double-breasted, Prince Charles buttonholes. Black double-breasted striped jacket, white shirt, black twill tie, black Oxford shoes. In order to get the suits that would have taken at least 1 or 2 weeks to make in 2 days, Richard paid a considerable expedited fee. Including 2 suits, he paid a total of $120,000, spending all the money he won from the casino at one time. Although it was a bit expensive, he didn't take it to heart. For him now, making money is easier than drinking water. If he wants, he can become a billionaire at any time. After leaving the hotel room number, he left the handmade tailor shop, put on sunglasses and a baseball cap, and walked slowly towards the nearby casino. Not long after, Richard arrived at the gate of a casino. Just when he was about to enter the casino and win a living expense for himself again, he suddenly stopped and looked up at a building 2 or 3 kilometers away from the casino. To be precise, he was looking at the roof of this building. Someone is using telepathy on him. Although he didn't know who was using telepathy on him, when the other party used telepathy to lock him, he also sensed the exact location of the other party. Although people with psychic abilities can detect and prevent others from invading their brains, people with psychic abilities can also be perceived telepathically. To give a more vivid example, people with psychic abilities have a psychic firewall that ordinary people do not have. To be more precise, only those with complete telepathy or psychic isolation superpowers will have a psychic firewall. If it is other types of psychic superpowers, for example, mental charm, creating hallucinations, hypnosis, etc., cannot prevent the invasion of telepathy. Although these psychic abilities cannot prevent telepathic intrusions, mutants with these psychic abilities are much more sensitive to telepathic intrusions than mutants and ordinary people who have no psychic abilities at all. Supervision. In order to see clearly the situation on the roof of the building, Richard directly used his supervision. It's actually them. Through the telescope and clairvoyance of supervision, his sight passed through the obstacles of the surrounding buildings and saw two familiar figures. One is a beautiful woman with blonde hair and blue eyes, tall figure, wearing a white hip-hugging skirt, which perfectly shows off her curves and long legs. The other is a man wearing a black suit, with dark red skin and a tail, who looks different from ordinary people and looks like a devil. The first time he saw these two people, Richard recognized them. The White Queen and the Red Devil. The White Queen and the Red Devil did not have supervision and could not see Richard, who was blocked by buildings and was 2 or 3 kilometers away. However, the White Queen knew that Richard had discovered her and the Red Devil. She indeed couldn't see Richard, but she could clearly feel that Richard had stopped where he was, and used his own telepathy to prevent the invasion of her mind. He is indeed a psychic. Although Riliu had told her this information in advance, she still had some doubts before confirming it herself. Telepathy is not a particularly rare X-gene superpower, but it is not something that anyone can possess. Not to mention complete telepathy, even if it is a psychic ability with a single effect, not all mutants have a chance to awaken. In addition, the White Queen did not completely believe Black King Xiao's intelligence, and there was another very important reason, that is, Richard had shown too many superpowers to the outside world. So far, the number of superpowers he has used in public alone has exceeded 10. Not only that, the superpowers he has displayed are also very diverse, including all types. Although some mutants can possess several different types of superpowers at the same time, the White Queen has never seen a mutant who has more than 10 completely different superpowers like Richard. After discovering that Richard had reversely locked herself and the Red Devil, the White Queen turned to the Red Devil and said, "I found him, and he found us. Where is he now?" The Red Devil asked directly. "The entrance to the Vasilis Casino 2 or 3 kilometers away." The White Queen replied, "Okay, I'll take you there." After saying that, the Red Devil stretched out his right hand towards the White Queen. After seeing the Red Devil's actions, the White Queen raised her fair and delicate left hand without any hesitation. Just when she was about to hold the Red Devil's right hand, the Red Devil's expression suddenly changed and he quickly retracted his right hand. Then, Lightning pulled out the 2 scimitars he wore on his waist and looked behind him with a wary expression. Teleportation. He sensed the spatial fluctuations caused by teleportation. Unlike the Red Devil, the White Queen did not sense anything strange. Although both require the use of psychic power, teleportation and telepathy are 2 completely different methods of use. Teleportation is the use of the power of the mind to travel through space. Telepathy, on the other hand, is a variety of mental applications. Although the White Queen did not sense the spatial fluctuations caused by teleportation, she immediately cheered up after seeing the Red Devil's actions. Under their gazes, Richard appeared in front of them out of thin air like a ghost. After seeing that the person coming was Richard, the Red Devil put away the scimitar in his hand. At the same time, the White Queen's voice rang. "We don't mean any harm, we just came to send you an invitation." After saying that, the White Queen took out a black invitation letter from the handbag she carried with her, walked towards Richard, and handed the invitation letter to him. Although he knew that the invitation only contained the time and place of the dinner and no other useful information, Richard still opened the invitation and took a look. "I probably have nothing to do with your Hellfire Club." Richard looked at the White Queen, who came to him and said slowly, "It didn't happen before, but that doesn't mean it won't happen in the future." The White Queen quickly replied. After saying that, she gave Richard a slightly ambiguous look and smile. Although she had read various reports about Richard and the videos uploaded to the internet early in the morning, after seeing him in person, the White Queen found that he was even more handsome than in the video. Especially the silver white hair that was longer than a woman's, silky and smooth, and gently dancing in the breeze. This little guy is so handsome. The White Queen sighed in her heart. Richard didn't care about the White Queen's scrutiny and continued, even if there is one in the future, I don't think I need to attend a meaningless dinner now. Although I can't tell you the specific content of the dinner now, I can assure you that as long as you attend the dinner, you will never regret it. The White Queen looked at Richard seriously. What on earth do these guys want to do? Richard doesn't think that the Hellfire Club is sending invitations everywhere because they are bored. Apart from anything else, it can be seen from the mutants they invited that they must be planning something, and the plan is not a trivial matter. Or just kidnap the two of them. Looking at the White Queen and the Red Devil in front of him, Richard thought seriously. Although the White Queen and the Red Devil both have very good superpowers, he is absolutely sure to take them down. For others, the superpowers of the White Queen and the Red Devil are very tricky. But for him, there is no threat at all. The White Queen's telepathy can't threaten him. Her diamond form, let alone. As for the Red Devil, the Red Devil has the ability of teleportation, and he also has it. Not only that, the Red Devil's strength and physique are only slightly stronger than ordinary people, and there is no way to compare with him who has super strength and super physique. As long as he is not hit in the eyes by the Red Devil's scimitar, even if he stands still, the Red Devil can't break his defense. Seeing Richard silent, the White Queen and the Red Devil thought he was thinking about whether to attend the dinner. After 5 or 6 seconds, Richard looked at the Red Devil and said, "Ask you a question, have you ever raped Mystique?" What? After hearing his words, the White Queen and the Red Devil frowned at the same time. I don't need to answer you. The Red Devil looked at Richard with a bad face. You'd better answer me, because this determines whether you can leave here alive today. Richard continued. The Red Devil immediately drew out the scimitar from his waist and looked at Richard with a serious expression. If he was alone, he would not hesitate to use teleportation to leave immediately or kill Richard. But unfortunately, he did not come alone. What's more troublesome is that the White Queen is now in front of Richard. Just as the Red Devil was thinking about how to rescue the White Queen before Richard took action, Richard summoned the authentic knife and patted the White Queen's fair face with the authentic knife. If you don't want to get hurt, you'd better stay away, Richard said to the White Queen. Feeling the cold touch of the authentic knife, the White Queen looked at Richard with a complicated expression. At the same time, several thoughts flashed through her mind. Is he a friend of Mystique? Did the Red Devil really rape Mystique? When Richard slapped her face with the authentic knife, the White Queen's first reaction was not fear, but frowning and looking at the Red Devil, wondering if the Red Devil really raped Mystique. Although she and Red Devil were companions of the same organization, and she also knew that Red Devil, Riptide, and Black King Shao were not good men who followed the rules. But this did not mean that she would not take anything to heart. She was also a woman, so she had a natural aversion to women being raped. Not only that, if Red Devil really raped Mystique, it meant that Red Devil would also have the possibility of raping her. The White Queen would never have thought that the reason why Richard asked Red Devil whether he had raped Mystique was just to know whether the Night Walker in this world was Mystique's son. The Night Walker in the movie just happened to have blue skin like Mystique. The Night Walker in the comics was Mystique's son. After seeing the White Queen, his companion, looking at him with suspicion, the already unhappy Red Devil became even more unhappy. I didn't rape Mystique, the Red Devil said, suppressing his anger. Although he didn't know whether Red Devil was telling the truth, Richard didn't intend to use telepathy to check his memory. The Red Devil, who has lived for thousands of years and has the ability of teleportation, knows very well how to prevent telepathy from invading the brain. Even without telepathy, he only needs to constantly use teleportation to change his position and not give the psychic the opportunity to lock on him, so that he can prevent telepathy from invading his brain. The last question, have you heard the story of, I don't eat beef? Richard said to the Red Devil. I don't eat beef. What is this story? What on earth does he want to do? Whether it is the Red Devil or the White Queen who has retreated to the side, they are looking at Richard with puzzled faces at this time. In terms of age, they are all older than Richard. But now, They all have a feeling that they can't keep up with Richard's thinking at all. Boy, you. Before the Red Devil finished speaking, he had a strong intuition of death in his heart. Not good. He is deliberately distracting my attention. Although he didn't know what Richard was going to do, the Red Devil didn't waste any more time and decided to use teleportation to leave immediately. As for the White Queen, he was in no mood to care whether the White Queen was dead or alive. The Red Devil's intuition came at a timely moment. But unfortunately, he was still a step too late. When asking him if he had heard the story of, "I don't eat beef," Richard had already locked the Dimension Slash. Dimension Slash. When the Red Devil was about to perform teleportation, Richard also performed Dimension Slash. Like the flash that Richard had at the beginning, teleportation also has a skill pre-swing time. Although this time is only a few tenths of a second, it is enough for Richard. Before the Red Devil's teleportation was performed, the Dimension Slash had already taken effect. The Red Devil, who was at the center of the Dimension Slash, felt an inexplicable strong binding force, and the surrounding space was twisted strangely, binding him firmly in place. At the same time, the crescent-shaped sword energy of the Dimension Slash appeared out of thin air, launching a powerful slash from all directions. Chi 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 chi. Whether it was the Red Devil's body or the scimitar in his hand, they were completely unable to stop the Dimension Slash's slash. The Red Devil didn't have time to do anything. The crescent-shaped sword energy of the Dimension Slash easily slashed through his body like a cream cake, cutting him into pieces of different sizes. Regardless of whether the Red Devil had raped Mystique or not, Richard would not let him go alive. The fact that the Red Devil also had teleportation alone meant that he was destined not to let the Red Devil go. Is the Red Devil dead? The White Queen knew that Richard was very strong. She had watched Richard's live broadcast at the Los Angeles branch before, and had seen Richard use the Dimension Slash on the mutant agents of the Los Angeles branch. But she never thought that the Red Devil would have no ability to resist in front of Richard. How strong is he? Is he really an Omega-level mutant? The White Queen looked at Richard with an unbelievable look on her face. Richard didn't care about the White Queen's gaze, and quietly performed the plunder. Gain new abilities. Teleportation, immortality. Gain the same type of ability, ability fusion. Teleportation is enhanced. Looking at the information panel in front of him, Richard frowned slightly. Although teleportation and immortality are the main superpowers of the Red Devil, in the comics, the Red Devil has more than just these two superpowers. In addition to teleportation and immortality, the Red Devil in the comics also has the abilities of time and space freezing, paralysis, deformation, and will bending. Immortality. Super long life, current level, alpha level. After opening the description of immortality and taking a quick look, Richard closed the information panel and walked towards the White Queen with the authentic knife. Soon, he came to the White Queen. After taking a look at the White Queen's figure, he said slowly, "You are a woman, so you have one more question than the Red Devil. First, how old are you this year? Second, what is your purpose in inviting alpha-level and beta-level mutants to the dinner? Third, did you capture a pair of mutant twins named Wanda and Pietro? Think about it before answering. These 3 questions also determine whether you can leave here alive today." Richard did not deny that he had a great interest in the young White Queen. But this does not mean that he will definitely let the White Queen go. If the White Queen plays tricks on him, he doesn't mind chopping the White Queen to death and making the White Queen's telepathy and diamond form his own. After hearing Richard's words, the White Queen, who had just calmed down, frowned immediately. Of these 3 questions, the first and third questions were beyond her expectations. She was not surprised that Richard wanted to know what the Hellfire Club was planning. But she didn't expect Richard to be interested in her age. In addition, she was also very curious about how Richard knew that Wanda and Pietro were in the hands of the Hellfire Club. After thinking for more than 10 seconds, she replied, "I am 26 years old. We invited other mutants to the dinner mainly to increase the core members and strengthen the strength of the club. As for Wanda and Pietro, they are indeed imprisoned by us now, but I don't know where they are imprisoned. Only Xiao knows where they are imprisoned. In addition, the operation to capture them was led by Xiao himself. I did not participate and I don't know the details. Only Black King Xiao knows the place of imprisonment." After hearing the answer from the White Queen, Richard's first reaction was that she was lying. But after thinking about it, mainly seeing the White Queen's body trembling slightly unconsciously, he felt that it was unlikely that the White Queen was lying. Since you don't know where they are imprisoned, then you. Before Richard finished speaking, the voice of the White Queen rang. Don't kill me, I will be very useful to you when I am alive. As long as I can do it, no matter what, as long as you say it, I will not refuse. Are you begging for mercy? Is this the benefit of being handsome? Or is it because she is also a white-haired person? Richard looked at Queen White in surprise. Although in the movie, the White Queen also chose to surrender and did not fight to the end. But no matter what, she resisted for a while in the movie, and she didn't give up her resistance until she was almost completely defeated by Magneto in her diamond form. But now, not only has the White Queen not used her diamond form, she doesn't even have any intense emotions. Won't you say no to anything? Richard's eyes glanced back and forth at the White Queen's pretty face and seductive body. Although she had often been looked at by men before, but for some reason, Queen White always felt that the way Richard looked at her was different from other men. In her opinion, the eyes of other men looking at her were full of desire, and what they were thinking about in their minds was how to ravage her in bed. And Richard gave her the feeling that a hungry beast was sizing up the prey in front of him, as if he wanted to eat her completely. Although she didn't know why she felt like this, the White Queen responded immediately without any hesitation. Yeah, anything. After hearing Queen White's words, Richard raised his right hand and grabbed Queen White's shoulder. Teleportation. The next second, he took the White Queen to the business suite of the Caesar Palace Hotel. As long as you can show your worth, I won't kill you. For example, Richard said to the White Queen. Just like before he could finish speaking, the White Queen interrupted him. It goes without saying, I know what to do. The White Queen spoke. Then, she squatted down directly in front of him, raised her hands, and prepared to unzip his pants. I'm very angry now. After seeing the White Queen's actions, this classic line flashed through Richard's mind unconsciously. Although I was no longer Hina before I traveled through time, I had played Ludo with several seniors in school. But now he has no intention of letting the White Queen help him relieve his anger. At least not until the real business is done. Just when the White Queen was about to unzip his pants, he immediately used teleportation and stepped back several meters. If what you said is okay and you mean this kind of thing, then I'd better kill you. You are indeed beautiful, but there are still many people in the world who are more beautiful than you. If you can only provide this value, I don't think I need to spare your life. Richard looked at Queen White seriously. After hearing his words, the White Queen immediately said, Your first question is to ask me how old I am. Don't you just want to sleep with me? Richard did not deny it and said straightforwardly. That's just one aspect, not the whole story. More importantly, even if I want to sleep with you, I should decide when to start, not you. Queen Bai frowned and looked at Richard, stood up, sat down on the sofa, and continued. What exactly do you want me to do? It's very simple, as long as you become my subordinate. Richard came to sit on the sofa opposite Queen White and said slowly. Subordinates, aren't you afraid that I will betray you? The White Queen said with a smile. There's nothing to be afraid of. If you really betray me, then I'll kill you. However, your words reminded me. Richard raised his right hand, mobilized his magic power, and used a little move he invented. Under the White Queen's gaze, a magic ball the size of an egg, emitting blue and white light, floated on his right hand. What's this? After seeing the magic ball summoned by Richard, the White Queen frowned and asked. It's just an energy ball. To be precise, it's an energy ball that only I can control, similar to a remote-controlled bomb. The energy inside is very stable. When it is not detonated or exposed to external stimulation, this thing will not be dangerous. But if someone tries to destroy it, the energy balance inside will be disrupted and it will explode like a bomb. Although it's not particularly powerful, it's more than enough to blow you to pieces. As Richard explained, he controlled the magic ball he named the first bomb, and let the magic ball fly in front of the White Queen. Before the White Queen could continue to ask, Richard let the first bomb magic ball penetrate into her chest and stay near her heart. If the White Queen took off her white hip-hugging skirt and underwear now, she would see a light blue round mark the size of a fingertip in the center of her chest, like a tattoo. This light blue circular logo is the logo of the first bomb, and was specially designed by Richard. Is this how you plan to control me? The White Queen said slowly. No, this is just one of the means. In addition to this, I will also use telepathy to tamper with your subconscious to make you more willing. You are also telepathic, and your telepathy is still above mine. So to tamper with your subconscious, you still need your cooperation. Richard said calmly. If it were someone else, he would only need to use telepathy. But unfortunately, the White Queen is also a psychic, and her telepathy is stronger than his. If the White Queen does not cooperate, let alone tampering with her subconscious, even simpler mind reading and memory reading cannot be done. People outside think you are a fearless person, but I didn't expect you to be so cautious. It's okay to install a remote control bomb on me, but you actually plan to modify my subconscious. The White Queen frowned and said, although she also has telepathy, it is also difficult for her to detect after her subconscious has been tampered with. Not only tampering with the subconscious, but also tampering with memory and personality seals are also difficult to detect. Phoenix Gene is a good example. Professor X sealed Phoenix's dark personality for 20 to 30 years, but Phoenix, who has telepathic ability, never found it. If there were no accidents later, causing the dark Phoenix personality to break through the seal set by Professor X, Phoenix would not have known that Professor X had been hiding it from her. If there were other options, the White Queen would definitely not let Richard tamper with her subconscious. But unfortunately, she has no other choice now. Or, the moment she chose to beg for mercy, she was mentally prepared. Otherwise, she would not choose to beg for mercy so easily. After a few seconds of silence, the White Queen said calmly, "Go ahead, I won't stop your telepathic invasion." Okay. Richard nodded, and immediately used telepathy to invade the White Queen's brain and enter her subconscious. Although he had never tampered with other people's subconscious before, he quickly completed the tampering of the White Queen's subconscious. Not only that, after leaving mental hints such as, cannot betray, obey all orders from Master Richard, and, Black King Shao is not a good person, in the White Queen's subconscious, he also deleted part of the White Queen's memory. To be precise, the part of the memory after the first bomb entered the White Queen's body was deleted. Although he could also delete the part of the memory of the first bomb, he did not do so. Because as long as the first bomb is still in the White Queen's body, the light blue circular mark on her chest will not disappear. Done. After doing all this, Richard looked at the unconscious White Queen and ended the telepathy. The White Queen's coma did not last long. She woke up in just 2 or 3 minutes. Would you like something to drink? After seeing her open her eyes, Richard, who was tasting whiskey, said to her, "Is there any red wine?" The White Queen glanced at the whiskey on the table and said softly, "Yes." As soon as the voice fell, Richard used his mind to move objects, making the red wine glasses, and bottle openers in the sweets wine cabinet fly in front of him. Then, under the gaze of the White Queen, he opened the red wine and poured her a glass. "Thank you." The White Queen took the red wine glass handed by Richard and said gently, "You're welcome. Where is Sebastian Shaw now? Who are the other core members of the Hellfire Club besides you and Azazel?" Richard asked the White Queen. The White Queen first took a sip of the red wine glass, then slowly replied, "Shao is in Miami now. In addition to me, Azazel, and Shao, the core members of the Hellfire Club are Turbulence, Janos Kays, Black Bishop, Isabel Nava, Black Rook, Bud Blom, and White Rook, Sirio McCartney." After hearing the White Queen's answer, Richard frowned slightly. He was not surprised that Turbulence was now also a core member of the Hellfire Club. But he had never heard of the names of the Black Bishop, the Black Rook, and the White Rook, let alone what abilities they had. What abilities do the Black Bishop, the Black Rook, and the White Rook have? Richard continued to ask. The White Queen did not hesitate and immediately replied. The Black Bishop's ability is to control shadows, the Black Rook's ability is to fly and release energy shock waves, and the White Rook has the ability to control gravity. They are all alpha level, and the Black Rook and the White Rook are brothers. After the White Queen briefly introduced the abilities of the Black Bishops and the other two, Richard continued to ask. Are they also in Miami now? No, Xiao has assigned them other tasks, but I don't know what the specific tasks are. The White Queen replied quickly. Although the White Queen did not know what the Black Bishops and the other two were doing now, Richard did not take it too seriously. As long as he knew where the Black King Xiao was, it was enough for him. If the Black King Xiao was the main course, the Black Bishops and the other three could only be regarded as desserts after the meal. Tell me everything you know about Sebastian Shaw. By the way, tell me about your own detailed experience and background. Richard drank the whiskey in the glass and said to the White Queen. Okay. The White Queen did not refuse and began to describe the situation of the Black King Xiao and herself in detail. Time passed by little by little. Before he knew it, more than half an hour had passed. Although he knew that the Black King Xiao and the White Queen in this universe were different from those in the movie, Richard did not expect that they were not only different from the movie, but also different from the personality in the comics. In the comics, Black King Xiao became a billionaire at the age of 40, and then joined the Hellfire Club and met the White Queen. Later, he became an ally of the White Queen, instructing the White Queen to kill other candidates, became the Black King of the Hellfire Club, and joined forces with the White Queen to control the Hellfire Club. Here, Black King Xiao knew the White Queen before joining the Hellfire Club. To be more precise, he invited the White Queen to join the Hellfire Club. When he invited the White Queen to join, he was already the Black King of the Hellfire Club. As for when he joined the Hellfire Club, the White Queen did not know. However, there is one thing that the White Queen can be sure of, that is, Black King Xiao is very rich. To put it simply, all the expenses of the Hellfire Club are borne by Black King Xiao. In addition to the fact that Black King Xiao's situation is different from that in the comics, the situation of the White Queen is also different from that in the comics. The White Queen in the comics was born in a wealthy family in Boston. Her father is a ruthless businessman, and her mother is a housewife who abuses psychotropic drugs. In the comics, she not only has a brother, but also an older sister and a younger sister. In addition, her sister Adrian and sister Claudia are also mutants. However, in the comics, her relationship with her sister is not very good, and it can be said that there is no emotional communication. Only her brother Christian gets along well with her. In this universe, the White Queen is the only daughter in the family and was born in an ordinary middle-class family in New York. She joined the Hellfire Club not because she agreed with Black King Xiao's ideas, but because after her parents died in a car accident, it was Black King Xiao who pulled her out of the sadness of losing her loved ones. In order to thank Black King Xiao for his help, she joined the Hellfire Club and became the White Queen of the Hellfire Club. After listening to the White Queen's story, Richard's first reaction was that his advantage as a prophet of a time traveler was getting smaller and smaller. Judging from the situation of the White Queen and the Black King Xiao, the prophet advantage of the time traveler can only let him roughly know the other party's name and what abilities he has. After sighing in his heart, Richard said to the White Queen, let's go meet Xiao and Jiliu now. After that, he stood up and stretched out his right hand to the White Queen. Yes, the White Queen nodded, stood up and held Richard's right hand. Mind transmission. Richard did not hesitate at all and decisively performed mind transmission. Although mind transmission has not been upgraded, after plundering the mind transmission of the Red Devil, his mind transmission has indeed been greatly enhanced. Before plundering, his mind transmission limit distance was 200 kilometers. And now, the limit distance of mind transmission has been increased to 800 kilometers. Las Vegas is located in Nevada next to California, while Miami is located in Florida on the east coast of the United States, more than 3,500 kilometers away from each other. Simply put, one is close to the west coast of the United States, and the other is on the east coast of the United States, almost across the entire mainland of the United States. It takes 4.5 hours to travel such a long distance even by commercial airliner. Richard and the White Queen took less than a minute to get from the Caesars Palace Hotel in Las Vegas to the Bay Park Yacht Marina next to the Jungle Island in Miami, and saw the Caspardina of the Hellfire Club. Although the name of the yacht has not changed, according to the information provided by the White Queen, there is no nuclear submarine connected to the Caspardina, and it is just a normal luxury yacht. Standing at the dock and looking at the Caspardina yacht, Richard did not continue to pull up the White Queen's right hand, but hugged her slender and seductive waist, and once again performed telepathy. In just a moment, he and the White Queen came to the sun deck of the Kaspardina. You don't need to take action in the next battle, just stand aside and watch, Richard said to the White Queen. Yeah, the White Queen had no opinion on Richard's arrangement and nodded immediately. After hearing the White Queen's answer, he performed telepathy and looked for Black King Xiao. Then, his expression became a little embarrassed. Except for the White Queen, he did not sense anyone on the yacht. Neither Black King Xiao nor Riptide were on the yacht now. Richard originally wanted to come over and catch Black King Xiao off guard, plunder Black King Xiao's superpowers and ask where Wanda and Pietro were imprisoned. But it turned out that plans could not keep up with changes. They are not here, call and ask where they are, Richard said to the White Queen. The White Queen did not perform telepathy and did not know that there was no one on the yacht. After hearing Richard's words, she immediately took out a white mobile phone from her white handbag, dialed Black King Xiao's number, and turned on the hands-free. Soon, the call was connected, and Black King Xiao's voice came from the other end of the phone. Has the invitation been sent? It has been sent. Azazel and I have returned to the yacht. Where are you and Genos now? The White Queen said calmly. After Richard tampered with her subconscious, she regarded Richard as her master, and Black King Xiao and Riptide became enemies. Genos and I are going out to meet a very important guest, and we will go back in the evening. Let's not talk for now, we'll talk about it when we go back in the evening. After that, Black King Xiao hung up the phone. Very important guest. Although he didn't know who Black King Xiao was meeting now, when he heard him say the word, very important, the first name that came to Richard's mind was Magneto. Could he be meeting Magneto? Did he already know that Wanda and Pietro were Magneto's children? Several guesses immediately flashed through Richard's mind. Do you need me to call Genos to ask? Genos has wanted to sleep with me for a long time. If I ask him, he won't refuse, the White Queen said to Richard. At this time, she had completely adapted to her identity as Richard's subordinate. To be precise, before she found out that her subconscious had been tampered with, she would have regarded Richard as her master. No need. Xiao and Genos are together now. If you call him, Xiao will definitely know. Since he has said that he will be back in the evening, let's wait for him here. After speaking, Richard came to the sofa next to him, took out a pair of sunglasses and put them on, sat down casually and enjoyed the sea breeze and sunshine. After seeing him sit down, the White Queen said softly, I'll go back to the room. Go. Richard nodded. Although he didn't know what the White Queen was going to do in the room, he didn't take it to heart. Not long after, the White Queen returned to the sun deck and came directly to Richard. Looking at the White Queen standing in front of him, Richard swallowed unconsciously. The White Queen was still wearing white clothes at this time. However, she was no longer wearing the white short skirt before, but a white bikini with very little fabric. Except for the key parts covered by the bikini, the graceful figure of the White Queen was fully displayed in Richard's sight. The White Queen is 178 centimeters tall, and her model-like height gives her a pair of proud long legs. Not only long, but also round legs, with beautiful leg lines, which are extremely eye-catching. Even if Richard is not a leg control, he still feels a little distracted after seeing the straight long legs of the White Queen. Legs for years. This word flashed through his mind immediately. In addition to this pair of proud long legs, there is a slender waist, towering white and tender snow-capped mountains, and curves. Beauty. A beauty that can make men have primitive animal desires. Women will only affect the speed of my sword drawing. Richard had always used this sentence to remind himself before. But now, he thinks it is not bad to spend some time on women occasionally and communicate with beautiful opposite gender about the origin of life and the mysteries of the universe. Although Richard was wearing sunglasses, the White Queen's female intuition told her that Richard was scanning her body back and forth with an undisguised gaze. After discovering this, a satisfied smile appeared on her face. In the business suite of Caesar Palace Hotel, Richard's behavior of retreating a few meters by teleportation gave her a feeling that she was not charming enough. Not only that, just like Mystique when she first met Richard, she also doubted whether Richard liked men. However, now, she can be sure that Richard's orientation is normal. It's just that he is more controlled than ordinary men. After taking a satisfied look at Richard, who was looking at her, the White Queen came to the sofa opposite, picked up the sunglasses and put them on, and lay down in an extremely seductive posture. Although the White Queen didn't speak now, Richard knew what she was thinking after seeing her pose. "Please help me apply sunscreen." The voice of the White Queen suddenly sounded. Richard stood up and came to the White Queen, smiling and saying, "No need to apply any sunscreen." After that, he picked up the White Queen and continued, "Which room do you live in?" "The guest bedroom on the starboard side." The White Queen cooperated and hugged Richard's neck, and replied softly. After hearing the White Queen's answer, Richard decisively performed teleportation and came from the sun deck to the guest bedroom on the starboard side. To be precise, he carried the White Queen to the bed in the guest bedroom. Soon, the guest bedroom sounded an alluring sound that was not suitable for children and represented the origin of life. At night, the restaurant of the yacht. Richard tasted the dinner prepared by the White Queen. Although the White Queen was not a chef with superb cooking skills and only prepared some very common American dinners, he didn't mind. In the guest bedroom on the starboard side, the White Queen has shown with her actions that even if she is a vase that people can't put down, worth playing with repeatedly and leaving a place in the collection room. While tasting the dinner prepared by the White Queen, Richard thought of Clarice unconsciously. Sure enough, Chinese food is more in line with his appetite. I don't know how she is doing in the mutant school. Time passed by little by little. Just as they were about to finish dinner, Richard suddenly stopped his actions and said to the White Queen sitting opposite him, "They are back, and they brought several guests." After hearing his words, the White Queen also performed telepathy. Without much effort, she sensed Black King Xiao, Jiliu and others. Although they sensed them, neither Richard nor the White Queen used telepathy to invade them. Unlike the movie universe, Black King Xiao in this universe is much more cautious. According to the White Queen, whether he was out, on a yacht, or in the secret base of the Hellfire Club, Black King Xiao wore a mind-isolating helmet most of the time. Richard was not surprised that Black King Xiao would be much more cautious than in the movie. Because there are many more psychics in this universe than in the movies. In the movies, there are only two psychics. One is the White Queen, and the other is Professor X. When there are only two psychics, and one of them is his own, Black King Xiao certainly won't wear a mind-isolating helmet often. Not to mention Black King Xiao, even Richard, who has only been in this world for 3 months, has already encountered, or more accurately, killed several psychics. Although not all psychics have complete telepathic abilities, this is enough for Black King Xiao to wear a mind-isolating helmet for a long time. As the leader of the Hellfire Club and a mutant with strong ambitions, if he doesn't even have this little bit of vigilance, he would be too lax. Apart from anything else, the existence of Professor X alone is enough to make him wear a mind-isolating helmet for a long time. Not only him, but Magneto is the same. In addition to Black King Xiao's habit of wearing a mind-isolating helmet for a long time, the White Queen also provided a piece of information. That is, the number of mind-isolating helmets in this world is not small. Although not everyone has one, according to the White Queen, many high-ranking government officials in the United States have helmets with similar effects. Not only the United States, but other countries are similar. Not only that, how to prevent the invasion of psychics is still a key research project for each country. Although Professor X is not as extreme as Magneto, governments are more wary of him than Magneto. If Magneto's superpowers are equivalent to a nuclear bomb in the open, then Professor X's superpowers are equivalent to a time bomb that may appear near everyone at any time. If it weren't for not knowing what other tricks Professor X had, and not being sure of completely taking him and the X-Men down, the US government would have taken action against him and the X-Men long ago. Not long after, Black King Xiao, Rapids and others came to the restaurant and saw Richard and the White Queen having dinner. After seeing Richard and the White Queen sitting together for dinner, Black King Xiao and Rapids frowned at the same time. Although they didn't know why Richard was here, they had noticed something wrong. They were not the only ones who were surprised. Richard also looked at them with a surprised expression. Or rather, he looked at a middle-aged man behind them with a surprised expression. Magneto. To be precise, it should be a middle-aged version of Magneto's clone. Even Magneto can be cloned. Although he had seen Sabretooth's clone in the Los Angeles branch of the Mutant Affairs Department and knew that the Mutant Affairs Department had mastered the technology of cloning mutants. But Richard never thought that he would see Magneto's clone on the yacht of the Hellfire Club. Even if he saw Magneto himself now, he would not be so surprised. After all, the Brotherhood of Mutants and the Hellfire Club both opposed the Mutant Restriction Act and the U.S. government, and could reach a cooperative relationship to some extent. But Magneto's clone, and the middle-aged version of Magneto's clone, was completely beyond his expectations. It's a bit troublesome. Black King Shaw alone is not a target that can be easily killed. With the addition of the middle-aged version of Magneto's clone, the difficulty rises sharply. Although it is completely different from his plan, Richard still remains calm, without any panic or fear. He is not sure whether he can defeat Black King Shaw and Magneto's clone at the same time. But he was sure of one thing, that is, if he wanted to leave, Black King Shaw and Magneto's clones could not stop him. Emma, what's going on? Where is Azazel? Before Black King Shaw could speak, Jilliu said to the White Queen. Just as the White Queen was about to answer Jilliu, Richard's voice rang out. He's dead, I killed him. Richard put down his knife and fork, picked up the napkin to wipe the corner of his mouth, and stood up. After hearing his answer, a small tornado immediately appeared in the palm of Jilliu's right hand. Jilliu in the comics and Jilliu in the movie have completely different superpowers. In the comics, Jilliu has the superpower of rotating his body at high speed, attracting surrounding objects, or making the bones produce calcification, and while rotating, releasing these calcifications with the power of bullets through the skin to attack the enemy. In the movie, Jilliu's ability is much simpler. Control and create a whirlwind. Just as Jilliu was about to release the small tornado in his hand to attack Richard, Black King Shaw raised his right hand to stop him. Then, he said to Richard, "Did Azazel offend you when he sent the invitation?" Richard shook his head and said slowly, "He didn't offend me, I just don't want to see him alive." Richard's tone was very calm as if he was saying that the night was very nice tonight. "I see. Then it seems there is nothing to talk about." As soon as Black King Shaw finished speaking, Jilliu launched the small tornado in his hand. As the flight distance increased, the small tornado that was only 20 to 30 centimeters high immediately soared to 3 or 4 meters high, flying towards Richard and Jisoo. Although the White Queen is now next to Richard, neither Jilliu nor Black King Shaw cares whether they will accidentally hurt her. Or, they have already seen that the White Queen has surrendered to Richard. The tornado released by Jilliu has made the entire restaurant a mess before it hits Richard. Richard did not use teleportation to leave, but raised his right hand to cast a strong wind. As the magic power ran, an equally thick tornado appeared out of thin air and flew towards the tornado released by the rapid flow. Boom! The two tornadoes rotating in opposite directions collided fiercely and exploded like a bomb. The uncontrolled airflow and shock wave attacked everyone in the restaurant without distinguishing between friend and foe. Except for Richard, whether it was the White Queen, Black King Shaw, the clones of the Rapid Flow and Magneto, or the two mutants who were not sure whether they were clones, they all used their own superpowers. The White Queen used the diamond form and turned into a shining diamond man like a work of art, with greatly increased strength, physical strength, and defense. Black King Shaw used the superpower of energy absorption to absorb all the airflows attacking him. As for the Rapid Flow and Magneto's clones, they used their own abilities to create a barrier in front of them. The barrier created by the violent force was like a wind wall, while Magneto's clones used super high-intensity magnetic force to create a force field wall that was invisible to the naked eye but had amazing defense. The two mutants behind Magneto's clone, one turned into a ball of water, and the other was wrapped in orange-red flames. As the only person at the scene who did not use superpowers, Richard stood directly on the spot, releasing magic to create an invisible barrier in front of him. For him with a super physique, even if he was hit by the uncontrolled airflow and shock wave, he would be fine. But he didn't want his hair to be blown by these airflows and shock waves. Silver long hair dancing slightly in the wind, that's called handsome. If it was blown into a mess, it would not be handsome, but embarrassing. The uncontrolled airflow and shock wave did not hurt anyone in the restaurant, but made the originally exquisite restaurant a mess, blowing away the tables, chairs and dishes in the restaurant, and shattering the glass of the restaurant. When everything returned to calm, Richard came to the White Queen slowly and hugged the White Queen's slender waist. Telepathy. Under the watchful eyes of Black King Shaw and Magneto's clone, Richard took the White Queen in diamond form off the yacht and came to the rooftop of a building near the dock. The next battle is not suitable for you, just stand here and watch. Richard said to the White Queen. Do you really not need my help? Except for Shao, who is wearing a helmet, I can help you deal with other people. The White Queen said quickly. No, I can handle it myself. By the way, if you are bored, you can think about what other postures can make me and you more happy. Richard said with a smile. After that, he once again performed telepathy and returned to the messy restaurant, summoning the authentic knife from the system space. After seeing him come back alone, Black King Shao said calmly. Are you going to fight 1 against 5 and deal with the 5 of us at the same time? Are you really so confident? After hearing what Black King Shao said, Richard shook his head. 1 against 5. No, 1 against 5 is the worst case. If you are lucky, this is a one-on-one between me and you. Telepathy. Without any hesitation, Richard immediately performed telepathy. Although his telepathy is not as strong as that of the White Queen and Professor X, it is also stronger than that of ordinary psychics. Black King Shaw was wearing a mind-isolating helmet, so he didn't have to worry about telepathy. But it was different for Riptide and the others. In just a moment, Richard used telepathy to freeze Riptide. All 3 had mind isolation. Richard's expression became a little serious. He thought he could at least freeze Riptide and Magneto's clone. Unexpectedly, in addition to Riptide, Magneto's clone and the other 2 mutants also had mind isolation. After seeing the serious expression on his face, Black King Shaw looked at him with disdain and said, Do you think I don't know you have telepathy? At this point, Black King Shaw paused, raised his right hand and pointed at Magneto's clone, and continued. Do you think he is just a clone of Magneto Eric? Let me give you a brief introduction. These 3 are not ordinary clones. They are the latest masterpieces of the Hellfire Club and the Department of Mutant Affairs, and the pinnacle of genetic engineering. Hunter. Although he didn't know what the pinnacle work of genetic engineering that He Wang Xiao said was exactly about it, Richard could probably make some guesses now. The so-called hunters, judging from the situation in front of them, are not just clones of mutants, but also clones based on the original mutants that have been adjusted accordingly using genetic engineering, or in other words, enhanced clones. Isn't the Hellfire Club opposed to the Mutant Restriction Act? You are opposing the Mutant Restriction Act while cooperating with the Department of Mutant Affairs. You are very contradictory. Although he failed to immobilize the enhanced clone called Hunter by Black King Shao, Richard still did not panic. Because of his psychic isolation ability, he really couldn't immobilize them telepathically. But except for Magneto's enhanced clone, the other 2 enhanced clones cannot threaten him. Whether it's like an elemental water man or a body wrapped in high-temperature flames, it's not a tricky superpower. All he needs to worry about is Black King Shao and Magneto's enhanced clones. There are no eternal enemies, only eternal interests. Speaking of which, I would also like to thank you. If you hadn't gone on a killing spree in the Los Angeles branch and made the people in the Department of Mutant Affairs realize that the Sentinel robots were not as reliable as they thought, they would not have come to cooperate with me. You are indeed very strong, but there are limits to a person's power. I don't care if you killed Azazel. For the sake of everyone being mutants, I will give you another chance to join the Hellfire Club. As long as you join, the position of White King will be yours. Your position in the Hellfire Club is only below mine. Of course, the premise is that you have to remove the manipulation you did on Emma. Although Black King Shao didn't know what Richard did to the White Queen, he was certain of one thing, that is, Richard must have done something to the White Queen. Otherwise, the White Queen would not have taken refuge in Richard, who killed the Red Devil so easily. In any case, the White Queen had been with them for several years, so she wouldn't betray them just because they wanted to. After hearing what Black King Shao said, Richard immediately said, Besides you are so generous. By the way, Emma told me something this afternoon. She said that you have always wanted to get her into bed, but you are very hypocritical and prudish. In addition, you are also very greedy. You want her body but also want her to work for you, so you can only use sweet words to coax her, hoping that she will climb into your bed willingly. But it's a pity that she never promised you so you still don't know what it's like to sleep with her. For the sake of your generosity, I will satisfy your curiosity. Emma is very moist. As soon as he finished speaking, Richard raised his authentic sword and waved it casually. Kansheen. As the authentic sword fell, 7 or 8 crescent-shaped sword energy, more than 1 meter long, purple on the outside and white on the inside, flew towards He Wangshao and his group. Without any hesitation, Black King Shao immediately used his energy absorption superpower. At the same time, Magneto's clone also created a defensive force field formed by super strong magnetism to protect himself and the other 2 mutants. The crescent-shaped sword energy that attacked He Wangshao collapsed instantly after reaching a few dozen centimeters in front of him, turning into pure energy and being absorbed into his body. Part of the remaining crescent-shaped sword energy passed through Riptide's body, cutting Riptide, who was as motionless as a wax statue, into several pieces. The other part hit the defensive force field created by Magneto's clone and exploded with a bang. Plunder. Although he only killed Riptide, Richard immediately started to plunder. Acquire new abilities. Control the whirlwind. Controlling the whirlwind can strengthen the skill, Big Wind. Is it strengthened? After seeing the system information, Richard decisively chose, yes. The skill Big Wind has been strengthened. Although Riptide's control whirlwind is unlikely to increase the level of Grand Wind, it is better than no enhancement at all. Compared with controlling a whirlwind, the powerful wind not only has a wider application range, but also does not need to worry about being inhibited by means of inhibiting X gene superpowers. After seeing Richard kill Riptide, Black King Shao's expression became extremely cold. Although he is not the kind of leader who would fight for his subordinates, Riptide is still a core member of the Hellfire Club. What's more, Riptide is obedient. A very capable and obedient subordinate was killed in front of him. It would be strange if he felt happy. Since you want to die, then I will make it happen for you. Black King Shao looked at Richard with murderous intent and said in a cold tone. You want to kill me, but you're not qualified enough. Richard replied calmly. Black King Shao's energy absorption is indeed a very tricky superpower, but it is far from invincible. Apart from anything else, if Richard didn't want him to get close to him, Black King Shao wouldn't be able to get close to him no matter how much energy he absorbed. Unless he also has the superpower of teleportation. After hearing what Richard said, Black King Shao did not continue to waste time with harsh words, but said to the 3 enhanced clones behind him. No, 7, number 8, stop him. Number 3, release your energy to me. On the surface, these 3 enhanced clones called Hunters by Black King Shao look no different from normal people. But Richard found that these 3 enhanced clones don't seem to be very smart. In other words, they give people a feeling of having no self-thought. Although they can use superpowers skillfully, they have not said a word since they appeared. Not only that, there is no expression on their faces. Whether they are attacked by crescent-shaped sword energy or killed violently, they stand behind Black King Shao expressionlessly like robots without emotions and self-awareness. After discovering this, Richard immediately thought of X-24 in the movie Wolverine 3. Because it is a product of ripening, with genetic engineering, X-24's emotions are not complete. To be precise, it only retains the emotion of anger. Although there is only the emotion of anger, compared with the 3 enhanced clones behind Black King Shao, X-24 is more like a real person. At least X-24 will be angry. As soon as Black King Shao finished speaking, number 7, who was surrounded by flames, and number 8, who looked like a water man, walked towards Richard. The Magneto clone called number 3 used his superpowers to create an ultra-high-intensity magnetic field, which completely enveloped Black King Shao. After being enveloped by the ultra-high-intensity magnetic field created by No. 3, Black King Shao immediately absorbed the energy of the magnetic field. At the same time, number 7 and number 8 attacked Richard. Number 7, who was surrounded by flames, raised his arms, and his 2 arms fired orange-red flames at Richard like a flamethrower. And number 8, who looked like a water man, turned into a water tornado and hit him hard. Teleportation. Without any hesitation, Richard decisively performed teleportation, avoided the attacks of number 7 and number 8, and instantly came to the sun deck outside. Then, he raised his right hand, and a small black hole-like black energy ball appeared above his palm. Black magic crystal. After seeing the black energy ball on Richard's right hand, Black King Shao immediately guessed his purpose. Without any hesitation, he immediately shouted, "Leave the yacht immediately." Although Black King Shao guessed Richard's purpose, it was too late. As he spoke, a green beam of light descended from the sky onto the yacht. More than 100 meters above the yacht, a huge meteorite with a diameter of more than 10 meters and wrapped in flames flew towards the yacht at a speed of more than 100 meters per second. Boom! The huge meteorite that appeared out of thin air hit the yacht accurately like a cruise missile. To be precise, it hit the area where the restaurant was located. The meteorite that fell from the sky broke the yacht in half and fell into the sea. The huge impact force raised waves 20 to 30 meters high and threw the wreckage of the yacht away. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.